And welcome to the BNB Show. My name is Brandon, of course, and this is my cohort over here. That would be Brendan. And we're coming to you today with a nice little special show. Yeah, we're usually Tuesdays or Thursdays during the week, but we've committed to this year, and we'd love to continue to do this as part of kind of just a little bonus show for you guys, which is, of course, the Prospect Watch. A lot of folks get started up on taking a look at these prospects once the college season ends. And both me and Brendan have thought that there'd be a bit of value added in this whole process if we sort of watch and look at these guys that we're going over through the college season, keeping track of them, keeping a close eye on them, taking it less from necessarily, the end result and going through the process with these players to make and hopefully get to a better stage of understanding who they are, what they are when we do get to the draft, who's the best fit for our Hawks team, and who's got the best upside, all of that stuff mixed in. So I want to thank Brendan for jumping in and joining us tonight. Brendan, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. All things considered.
All things considered, especially coming off that last loss this past week. Well, we've got an array of prospects that we want to dive into, so we're not going to mess about. We're going to get right into it. Before, we've been looking at in bit different views of this prospect watch. First, just who's the names you guys want to watch, then who's kind of starting to early stand out. We've kind of reached the point of the season now, Brendan, don't you believe, where prospects are now starting to emerge. The cream is rising to the top, and we're starting to feel for who's now maybe the kind of the best ones at their position as it's starting to look. Now, this process is an ever-changing one. That's the point of doing these shows over the portion of, throughout the season. And these are, what's the word, Brendan? Subject to change. But we feel like these are the guys, as we've kind of taken a look at some of the tape and dived in on them, to feel like these are the guys starting to look like they are emerging in that fashion, right, Brendan?
Yeah, we've basically seen most of what we need to see from the games. There's probably going to be a couple of late risers or maybe late fallers from the end of the season. Like I think that C.J. Stroud last year did himself some big favors with that playoff game against Georgia. I don't think he would have gone as highly as he did if not for that game. But most of this stuff we've kind of figured out, I think. And generally speaking, the main determinator of draft positioning that remains is not the remaining games, it's the combine.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, that's true. Most of what the players have done up until the point of the season is going to be how they're going to be painted as the prospect they are. And like you say, the combine, pro days, senior bowls, these are things that now come into, value later on downwind, if you were. But we're getting a good idea on these guys, where they're at, what they're doing. So let's get it started off right off the top here, Brendan, with the position that I think is at the forefront of everyone's mind. It normally would be anyway for the average fan, but especially right now in the midst of this season, as there are some that feel like there are some question marks around the quarterback, some maybe not sold on Geno, some wanting to make sure that if Geno can't be the guy into the future, that we have a guy ready to go, waiting in the wings, quarterback of the future. Brendan, first off, is this season, let's get the prospects. Quick question. Do you feel like more now than ever throughout the course of this year that the Hawks are driving towards taking a quarterback, not necessarily in a high spot, but in this draft, we're coming out of one of our picks being a QB?
It would be very surprising, and I think also a mistake to not. This is a very good quarterback class, and I don't think next year's class is going to be all that good. Like 2025, obviously there's time for stuff to change, but you've got Shadur Sanders, who looks great, but then you've got Cade Klubnik, who could go one way or the other. We don't know yet. It's all potential right now. It's not really any production. And then you've got basically anybody who's going to stay back from this class. Like if Riley Leonard stays back, he probably becomes a first rounder in 2025, but he actually has to stay back. If somebody like, I don't know, Quinn Ewers decides to transfer, he becomes a top pick next year, but he actually has to do that first.
Yeah.
So I look at that and I go, I don't think you're going to be able to do this next year. And you've set this up very well. Geno Smith is your quarterback for the rest of this season. Next year, you lose Drew Lock. You go into the 2024 season. Geno's your starter until such a time as it no longer makes sense for Geno to start. And then you've got your rookie quarterback to go in. Unless Geno just keeps the job forever because he's playing so well, which, hey, that's a good outcome too. But it seems to me that things are set up very well to play it like that, because that final year of Geno's contract has very, very low guarantees, very easy to get out of. So to me, that seems to be the obvious play.
Yeah, it would seem that way to me too, where you just hedge your bets here a little bit, and kind of try to make it work from that fashion of things. And like you say, the quarterbacks in this draft, when we did this last time, Brendan, it looked to us like there were 3 emerging first rounders at quarterback, and probably not anything more than that. Has that changed in the progression of this college season by your eyes?
Um, I've got 4 guys with round
Okay.
1 grades. I'm
Okay.
very hesitant about 2 of them, but when I put together my big board, I just I couldn't figure it any other way. I'll put it like that. Like if I can't find 32 prospects who I think are better than you, then you're a first rounder, regardless of how I feel about you personally.
That's true. That's true. That's part of what we're trying to do here is project where these guys are going to go on top of what they are as a prospect. So let's get into, and with the quarterbacks, we're probably going to go as deep into this positional group as any other because, like we're talking about at the top, this is the one that I know you guys are most wondering about and maybe the most important to consider coming into this draft. Has the Drake May overcome Caleb Williams fever overtaken you, Brendan?
Um, Man, Drake May's had a weird season, it feels like, hasn't he? Like, I
Yes.
like him, but he's had some games where he's got like sub 50 completion percentage and he still has like 400 yards, but his completion percentage is like 42. I don't know. It's just kind of up and down, left and right, weird. His team, I mean, his defense is not very good, obviously. His defense has blown some very winnable games here. I guess both these top quarterbacks have something in common, but yeah, I'm definitely not seeing it. I know Caleb went through that little bit of a rough patch where he lost a couple games, and he had that Notre Dame game, which was the worst game he's probably played since he was 5 years old. But I mean, I was watching him in that Washington game, and it's not fair. Some of the stuff he does, some of the situations he turns into a positive from a negative is just I don't I don't know how he doesn't become a Hall of Fame quarterback in the NFL. He's just so good.
Yeah, I likewise am not moved into that direction. I'm a guy that as I've seen Drake May's stock seemingly out there in the universe going up and down at times, I still have found myself throughout this going, he's going to still end up being a minimum top 15 pick, and most likely much higher than that. But like you say, with Caleb, there's something special about what he's doing out there. There he has something special to him, I guess, not what he's doing out there. And he's the supporting cast. They just fired their defensive coordinator there. It's been horrible for them defensively. His offensive line, I don't think, has held up over the course of the season relatively well for him. It seemed like, especially against Washington, he was on quite a, and it wasn't just Braylon Trice, guy we'll talk about. The kid on the opposite side was given almost as much hell to Caleb as well. He was just under a lot of pressure. And that, as we talk about with Geno this year, it's a kind of a common sentiment over here that does affect how you play the position, doesn't it? And affect, whether or not you're going to do well or sometimes have to feel like you got to just go out there and be the superhero guy, which is what Caleb's had to be this year. But he makes so many throws. He's got the arm strength. The questions come in on him right now that I'm hearing. Would you say this is fair that, well, he's going to have to be like a Russell Wilson quarterback in the NFL. He's going to have to play off script in order to find, he can't play on script. That's kind of the knock on Caleb right now.
I'm not convinced that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's his strength, right? To make crazy stuff happen out of nothing.
Yeah.
But I'm not convinced that that's the only thing that he can do. I think that you put some structure around him, you're going to see some good things. Like I think that he is playing extremely well within that Lincoln Riley offense.
Yeah.
And I do think, I continue to believe that he is one of the 3 or 4 best quarterback prospects ever.
Oh,
I put him up there with the John Elways, the Andrew Lucks, the Trevor Lawrences. He's the full package. The only thing you can say about him is size. And we talked about this. He is a little bit smaller than a guy like a Patrick Mahomes. He's smaller than Andrew Luck, but he's not small. Like Jaden Daniels is small. This guy's just not big.
yeah.
But arm strength, improvisational skills, mobility, arm strength, everything is here. And I cannot believe his instincts in the pocket sometimes. They just blow me away.
Yeah, he's the definition of a magician in the pocket with his feel and ability to get away and just he has some kind of unorthodox way of getting out sometimes of the pocket and the way he can move his body. And he's just athletic and just kind of incredible with that. I agree with you too. You have a great point about the size to him. Guys there's different versions of 6'1.5", 6'1". There's guys 6'1" that are going to be like Matt Corral a couple of years ago that was probably 170 pounds soaking wet. That's at least how he looked on a football field. And this guy who looks legitimately 220, 225, he's got a solid lower half. He looks like he's going to be able to hold up at the NFL level. I have found myself creeping a little bit back, a little bit off of the getting to the Elway luck stuff of it, where I almost kind of feel like he might be just a smidge short of that, but that's still not to say a guy who isn't fully capable of becoming a Hall of Famer. Just that the size part got me a little bit with it when I think about it on him, especially operating within. I believe he can do it in operating on structure and all that stuff, Brendan. But that's the one part that I have a little bit of a little question with that 6'1". Is that going to inhibit him at all on that size standpoint of, making those on-time throws? Because as we see in the NFL, it's, yes, you can do the scrambling thing and go and you can make some great plays. But like Wilson learned when he went with the Jets, you can't make that wholly what you tried to do as a quarterback. You've got to have the structured stuff you can pull off too.
Right.
Let's get to the third guy here on our list. I think I agree with you on Drake, by the way. He's great arm talent, everything physically prototype you'd want. But there's the accuracy not always there, and the production's not going to be top notch. And there's some up and down moments for a guy who a lot of people are looking at going number 2, number 3 overall in this draft.
Yeah, I have him 5th on my big board, which is still good, but a couple guys I like a little bit more compared to the average big board.
I think that's very fair. I might even have him a smidge, tiny bit lower than that, but that's very fair. Yeah. Let's get to our third QB, which is one that many Huskies in our audience are going to love to hear, that we both think is going to go in the first round, though I think that this is going to start to get to be more of a consensus. Michael Penix from the University of Washington. Brendan, is this your third? He is mine.
I kind of go 3A, 3B right now.
You got to pick one, man. I'm not letting
gunpoint,
you.
though,
I'm
my
gun
number
you.
3. At number 3, I'm going to go with Ewers. I am. I'm a little, this was tough, but I look at Quinn Ewers and I see a guy who has a lot of things that I do like, and I can see it working really easily in the NFL. Penix, there's a lot of stuff that has to go right. Even though I know Penix is a better player, especially like right now. I mean, that's not even fair. Ewers is injured right now. He's not even playing. But I look at that and I just say, who would I rather stake my franchise to for the next 12 years? And I'm looking at Penix. I know he's going to get hurt if he gets hit enough. I just know it because that's his whole career. I look at him in a college system that has found a way to allow him to basically never get hit. He gets hit like twice a game because of that system. And because of that, it works. But I don't see that happening in the NFL. You can't play quarterback in the NFL and expect to only get hit 2-3 times a game. That's not realistic. Unless you're bringing the exact perfect offensive system with him, like maybe the team that drafts Penix also gets to hire DeBoer as their head coach, which, I mean, I hope not. But even if that, I mean, so much has to go right for Penix to pan out in the NFL, I think. And then you have the age, and then you have him having probably the second best receivers in all of college football. There's enough there that I did end up putting a first-round grade on him, but I didn't feel very good about it. With Quinn, I think I like his arm a little more than you do. I do think his arm is a little bit better than you seem to. I look at some of those throws he made against Alabama, and I'm like, that looks like an NFL arm to me. That looks like a really good NFL arm. And I like what he's doing in terms of the improved mobility. I think most of his games this year have been really good. And I don't know. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do Penix number 3. My number 3 is Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, I think it's certainly fair. I think the criticisms brought up on Penix, I think, it's a matter of whether you're willing to kind of sign that waiver form as an NFL team to sign up for Penix, where the arm talent's just so true and you love the upside so much that you're going to take that risk versus little bit of maybe a safer situation there with Ewers to go to him. And Ewers, I do have much later as far as in my outlook on it. I'm going to be with Ewers. I think a lot different than maybe a lot of pro personnel departments will be with it, where I think that they might be a little bit closer in alignment where you are. In your outlook of it. I just go back and I see the Alabama film and, let's take the throw he makes over the top, which is, I think, the pretty throw that stands out to everybody where he throws, 60 yards up over the top. But when I go back and watch through the rest of that game, there's so many throws within that they're just simply him just peppering the ball. Sark in a lot of ways has got a lot of the same kind of components of his offense being run like Penix is, almost even more so with the bubble screen, tunnel screen, just getting the ball out of your quarterback's hand all the time. It kind of, to me, it does get run like the epitome of that college offense, which is just sort of peppering the ball in real short doses where you see his arm talent occasionally, but it's not like he's stepping back there, letting it rip, playing and play out, throwing, 15-yard post routes here. And I know that's not college football to a degree, but it's just sort of like a couple wow throws a game for me don't necessarily instruct me that, you're going to be able to make the intermediate throws and the accurate throws in other spots. He's not a bad prospect to me with Quinn Ewers, but to me, you combine that with the fact that you got the injuries he's gone through this year. I think he had it last year too, as well. If I'm not mistaken, he got injured against Alabama last year too. And then you also add into it that the mobility factor comes into play here. So, I mean, the injury thing with Penix does kind of fit into there a little bit with Ewers as well at this point. Maybe not to such an extreme degree, but it does factor in. And then you factor in that he did get more mobile because he lost weight, because he decided to finally commit himself. This is kind of my warning bell sign too as well. You have a 5-star pros quarterback who's got kind of the pudgy body coming out of high school, who doesn't look like he's kind of, like he's kind of gliding by on what he's got. And then like there's this big, huge thing made up about the fact that he dropped this 15 pounds and now he's a little more mobile. He's more mobile. He's not mobile now. He's more mobile. He was a statue before that could barely move. Now he's got a little bit of mobility, but once he gets to the NFL, he will be viewed a lot more alignment of a guy that's like a statue more than a guy that's like even a Daniel Jones type of guy. So this has him drop down to me, even though he does become the 4th quarterback for me on my board, Brendan. I have him in more of a high 3rd place in the way that I look and view him right now. First, I know like you're not alone on this, by the way. It's not you're out there in the island on this one. There's going to be a lot of people that he's going to get a lot of buzz for that 1st round potential status if he does go back and declare for the draft or come back or transfer, like you said.
Yeah, another element with Quinn Ewers that I think needs to be mentioned is his leadership. And that's something that I believe that Schneider, when talking about Quinn Ewers, has really been a very complimentary about. And that's something that he seems to really value. And that seems to be something that he really sees with Quinn. So I know that's kind of an abstract thing right now because we don't know how he would be a leader in the NFL. Mm-hmm. But there does seem to be a little bit of that going on. And I think that does move the needle for me as well.
That's a fair point. It's the hard part for me to judge on that because I can't see in the kid's head at all. And that's, you can read stories or anything, but a lot of these stuff is you'll get pieces brought out by the college programs to make their guys look great. Not to say that's what's going on here. You're right about John Schneider having reportedly an affinity for Quinn Ewers in the background of things on this. Let's go to a couple other quarterbacks down the line here. We don't have to spend a ton of time on these guys, but we can kind of
just to lay things out real quick though. So I go number 3 Ewers, number 4 Penix, and you go reverse.
Yeah, I go Caleb Williams, Drake Maye. Penix is a 1st round quarterback to me. He's going to be a top 15 quarterback to me. Mm-hmm. And I also believe that the arm talent is so good and the production's been so great the last couple of years. All the points you made are completely valid and on point. I'm not trying to take away from that, but I think that when I look at what he's done versus Ewers, who's the past 2 years, I believe has had season-ending injuries. And then, as I remember it now, that's absolutely what happened the year before. As I remember watching that Will Anderson tape of that Texas game a lot. So it's a guy we talked about who actually injured him, Brendan, which is one of the things we're going to have to speak about with Dallas Turner, because that's his whole thing. MO is that he's supposed to be kind of a QB taker out or hitman kind of guy. But with Penix, to me, he's had to make some more big time throws. Ewers can make the big time throws. Penix has been asked to make these big time throws more consistently throughout the last 2 years. And I think that even though he isn't much of a manufactured offense as Texas is to a degree, DeBoer still does have him air that ball out. Part of it is that he can trust his playmakers to make those trust throws like he did this year where he's in the back of the end zone, Brennan. He throws that 55-yard throw out to, I think it's McMillan, just kind of tosses it up there for him. But at the same point in time, to me, I think that he does have a stronger arm, I think, than Ewers. The delivery is way different between the two of them. I think the mobility is probably the same, if not a little bit more better mobility for Michael Penix. But I just think he's got a little more wow factor. If you're going to get a quarterback in the first round, you want that. I don't know if I'd get as much outside of the occasional throw with Ewers of the wow factor.
Probably right. And don't get me wrong, I think that Penix is doing a much better job with the things that he can control. Like, he is doing a brilliant job with the things that are in his control. He can't really control the fact that he's made of glass. That's not his fault. But I do believe that it is the case.
Yeah. And there's a lot of evidence for that. And it's the big, huge part of the risk at the front of this stack that if you take them, like you said, you're going to have to get your offensive line right. You're going to have to get your protections right. You're going to have to get your scheme right to make sure that you're, being aware of that. And if you are, I think you can maximize his production. And I'm going to build into the thought process that whoever takes him, Brendan, is doing that math and deciding that they're going to go that direction and understanding that if they do, this is the guy that he can be. If we put those elements together, what they showed at Washington is this is the guy, this is the potential. And that's what these guys have these kind of college seasons do, is they're showing you the potential, what they can be. Do things got to be made right for him in a way that may not have to be right for some of these other guys we're going to talk about even deeper down this list into the second and third round? Guys who might be able to overcome if things isn't perfect around them. Yeah, sure. But the arm talent is legit. The arm strength is legit. Fairly quick release overall. A little tiny windup, but not too bad. And he can make every throw in the book.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I just hope that when he gets to the NFL, he's able to utilize these things.
Yep, it's a fair point, man. And
he's got to be on the field to do it.
Whoever drafts him better put him bubble wrap. Get those 80 shoulder pads, Brendan. The kind that went out to like here and put him. He's like, I can't throw. We don't care. We're protected. The big knee pads. You ever remember the old? Now they don't wear knee pads. Remember the old school knee pads were those things were like a foot square footage around the knee. Who's your fourth quarterback on, I guess we're at the fifth. Who's your number 5?
I go with my first round 2 quarterback, Cam Ward of the Washington Cougars, another Pac-12 guy. His season kind of got upended by the fact that Washington State is really, really bad. They don't really have any other good players besides him and Jaden Hicks.
Mm-hmm.
But I continue to be impressed. I like his arm talent. He doesn't have a huge arm, but he puts a lot of good zip on the ball. Great pocket presence, some mobility. Not like some of these other quarterbacks. Not like a Jaden Daniels, but he's able to use his mobility very well to evade pressure. Has had some really impressive games despite not having anything going on around him. I continue, despite the fact that his season did kind of go in a bad direction and Wazoo's now going to be fighting like hell to make a bowl game. I still really like him. And if he does come out in this draft, I don't know if he has to or not, I still look at him and I go, let me put a real team around that guy. And I think he's going to be good in the NFL.
Yeah, he was a guy that has dipped down a little bit for me because I was looking for that performance to come up a bit more this year and see where he was going to be at with that. And, it's not been necessarily as, awesome there with it. So it's hard though. Like you say, it's hard to just differentiate between where it's on Ward and where it's on potentially really the supporting cast around him. You couldn't kind of find two difference of that supporting cast between what you have with Penix and what he's able to work with versus what Ward has. And I love how much of a gunslinger he is. I do have all of these quarterbacks we're going to talk about here soon in this, or that we're talking about in this kind of realm, all kind of in the same sort of third round range. So for me, I think they all have very tantalizing upsides. I think there's some downsides with them too. I don't think that they're clear in the first round range to me in the way that I look. I could see them all being a little bit overdrafted though, because of the need of the teams that are out there. There's so many quarterbacks so many teams that want quarterbacks, and I think that's going to push these guys all probably up into the second round. But I can't quite get there with Ward having a year he's having this year, which might be arguably worse than the year he had last year. I have an issue with, having a quarterback I'd put up into that range quite at that point with, even though it's not all his fault, man. I don't want to seem like I'm burying him for it. And he's got a lot of good things he brings to the table, including, like you talk about, some underrated mobility to him. But I do just have a little bit of a struggle with that aspect of would like to see a little bit more of a stronger season here in this final year before he's declaring.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I still think he's a second round guy as of right now. About a month ago, we were both talking about him as a guy who had a chance to ascend up to round 1. I don't think he did that. But I'm not ready to push him down because that Wazoo team is bad. I just feel like round 2 seems about right.
I think it's a fair point. And again, that drive, these guys getting driven further up, man. When we go eventually into this offseason, going through the teams that need quarterbacks, I think it's going to be very clear to us that we go, oh my God, yeah, somebody's going to be pushing on these guys much faster, much quicker than we might have thought they should have gone at, because teams are really needing these QBs right now. Couple of little things. We're going to get to these. Gavin KG, you thank you for becoming a member. I think you became a member last night for me. I think you became a member for right now for Brendan. So it's going back and forth, Brendan, because he was our guy last night on that too. So thank you for that, Gavin. Appreciate you becoming a member of the channel. Welcome aboard the channel. Seahawks OG, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, for fun, USC to Big Ten with that D and no Caleb. Riley flames out 2024. Would Riley be a better NFL offensive coordinator than Waldron? Ooh.
Wouldn't Riley just follow Caleb to wherever he goes and probably be a head coach, not a coordinator? I know in this scenario he's flamed out, but I don't think he'd have to dip down to an offensive coordinator job if he wants in the NFL.
Well, I think he's saying no Caleb, meaning Caleb's gone. Like he's gone to the draft.
Yeah, but I'm saying that wouldn't he then go coach whatever team Caleb went to?
That's a great point. Yeah, I think that if he's going to choose an OC job, he's going to want to be choosing one that's going to set him for success. And he's no doubt believes in Caleb. So I think that would be his probably progression. That's a great point. I didn't consider it. So I think Brendan's knocked this one out the park on that answer, man. If he's getting fired this year and he's not going to just go to another college program, but go to the NFL, and then no one's going to hire him yet, I think, as a head coach, it would be an OC job. So, where's Caleb going right now? Chicago at this point?
Arizona, Chicago. I mean, honestly, if I'm him, I'm not going to either of those teams.
I know, but if he's got Riley going with him, maybe it's different too. Maybe he suddenly starts to drop some of that like requirement where he's like, well, I get my college coach. How much is Gannon looking over his shoulder if Riley's there as his OC?
Yeah.
He's already on this like shaky ground. And they bring him
New England is in the race. I think the Giants are going to be there. They're not winning another game this year. They're rolling with Tommy DeVito.
Yeah. DeVito. Yeah. I think probably the Giants, which will be, and the Giants might be very well moving out coaches too. So that then opens the door even more for a guy like Riley if he's not going to. But I think Riley stays at USC. I don't think that he was looking to come in there and just flip this around that quickly.
You think Dable's 2 and done? You think he's going 2 and out?
He's got some freaking bad moments this year, freaking out on the sidelines. Every time I watch him lose, he's over there he looks like a mad Santa, dude, an angry Santa. He's just, and he's screaming off the sidelines, and he just seems like he's a little untethered and chaotic and has not the control that he wants to have on the team. And if I'm watching that from an owner in the box, I'm going, it doesn't seem like we're moving in a good direction, and he had to have signed off on that Daniel Jones deal, in my opinion. That's an indictment on him. If you thought that was a smart thing to go out there and do, maybe it's not, but I would think that he would listen to your coach a little bit on making that big monster swing for a quarterback where you're given a contract that's all about what he's supposed to do in the future, not about what he's done. But I don't know. We'll see.
Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, the thing is that Giants team, every coach they hire lately gets 2 years and then they're out. McAdoo, Joe Judge, Pat Shurmur, and now Dable. Like, eventually, don't you have to go past 2 years with somebody?
I got you, man. I got you. I'm gonna blow your skull off with this one. Brian Dable's fired. The New England Patriots fire Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick goes back to his roots, back to where he defensive coordinated and won a Super Bowl championship under Bill Parcells back in the 90s to the New York Football Giants. And the first move he makes coming into the door is to hire Riley as his offensive coordinator as he's about to go and draft Caleb Williams.
No, I mean, that would put the Giants back on the map. You know the NFL doesn't like having these New York teams be so bad. So that would be like the year LeBron went to the Heat in free agency in terms of like suddenly injecting this ridiculous amount of life into an organization.
I mean, no matter where you think with Bill on, okay, Bill can't do offenses. He needs a Tom Brady type, but if you give him a Tom Brady type, he can make it go. Well, you're giving him maybe a Tom type here with the Caleb, and then to go into New York with some good talent across the board defensively, he can work with too. I mean, I'm just saying, Brandon, if New York Giants, you mentioned, you're right. Giants have gone through what? Joe Judge. Remember the guy with the McAdoo and the mustache?
McAdoo.
Like, he had the weird last name and the funky mustache, like the combo.
Yeah.
It's been horrible for them. So they do need to go, in my opinion, go make a bigger legit hire. And it was funny, a couple of weeks ago, we were hearing, oh, but Belichick's going to get a contract extension, which turned out to be seemingly BS. That, in fact, that was his camp kind of trying to leak that to maybe kind of stem up some of the in-house internal strife going on. But then they lose this past week to the Commanders after they bail on their edge guys at home in Foxborough. I'm just saying, Brandon. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I heard a report that Belichick might get fired if they lose to the Colts in Germany this week. I don't know if I buy it, but I mean, it's not impossible.
Yeah, I mean, the fire in mid-year, Bill Belichick, I can't see as being a move that makes a lot of sense. That would seem like a respect thing that you would accommodate a coach like that, who's accomplished what he's accomplished. I mean, he just won a Super Bowl like 4 years ago or something. I think you got to go let him go through the year at that point and call it a day. But I mean, I guess they're bringing out the pitchforks out there in Boston, I guess, huh? Goodness.
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about it, but that's a fun theory, right? Belichick, Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams going to New York.
I could see it. And then Lincoln Riley's like, okay, I couldn't make USC work, but I have my pathway to being a head coach in the NFL at some point. I'll take over for Belichick when he retires in another 3 or 4 years.
I like it.
Thank you, Oju. What a great topic. You sent us on a trek on that one, man. We went down the line with you, but appreciate you for the dono. Addison Shovel, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, super excited for the Rams game. I will be there. Oh, let's go. That's a hell of a stadium, I understand, to go out there and check out, man. It sounds like it's an event into itself, doesn't it, Brendan? Going into the LA, what it cost? $5 billion.
Yep, they knocked down Hollywood Park for a overpriced, ugly modern stadium.
It is an ugly one, man. It has no personality, or for putting that much money into it, you'd I don't know. I expect some marble statues or something, I guess. It's just looks like another stadium to me, But,
yeah, let's think about these recently built stadiums, because the new Giant Stadium, that place I think sucks too.
Yeah.
I don't like that place.
That place looks the best from the outside. It looks
Mm-hmm.
it looks good on the outside, but then you go on the inside and it's got there's nothing to it.
Jerry World seems like it's kind of cool, but it's not cool for the team that plays there because there's no home field advantage, because every opposing fan treats it like a vacation. So they never have a majority Cowboys fans in the stadium, it feels like.
I feel like Jerry World just has to happen. If Jerry Jones is the owner in Texas, that kind of stadium to that size, those proportions has to be built that way, right? It just it fits to type a bit, where it is completely not, it doesn't have the personal feel to it, but it does have a personality to it. It is a thing. It's just like you say, not necessarily a home field advantage, ooh.
Most of these new stadiums just aren't very good.
No. How about Detroit? You like Detroit's? It's relatively new.
That seems okay. Isn't
right.
Ford Field 20 years old now, though? When did they redo it?
Yeah.
The Vikings is brand new. That seems okay.
It's way better than Metrodome. Metrodome was like playing in a closet. Yeah, I guess that's kind of it. I think ours is still kind of the best as far as just uniqueness, and one end looks a little different from the other end, and you have it near the, water. They can get some really cool shots of the water in the background and when they're in the between points. But they certainly don't do like baseball does at times. Like they don't really seek to try to grab a personality for their stadiums when they build them now. It's just like, just make it normal the way it is. Just do it the way.
You only get one chance at your stadium. You gotta think it through a little bit more.
That's what I'm saying, man. It's going to be there for 40, 50, 60, sometimes 100 years on this stuff. Give it some thought, make it a little bit, give it a little bit extra.
Okay, so who's your QB5? We talked about Cam Ward. What's your QB5?
My QB5 would be Bo Nix. And Bo Nix to me is a bit of what I would say. There's a lot of stuff with Michael Penix actually and Bo Nix that they have similarly to them, that they're not anywhere near the same players, but that you're going to need to bring them in and fit them exactly to your scheme, as opposed to bringing them in and having them on board your scheme. Does that make sense? And I guess what I mean by that is that he's not a guy to go back there and go a lot of times through multiple reads or do a lot of improv past. I'm going to go running with it. I'm going to go just be escapable. He's got some of the better legs I think you'll find in this draft, in his ability to get away. Like he's going to run, I think, probably a 4.5 40, and he's going to be a combine tester to the maximum when he goes out there. I mean, he is, but he's got a really strong arm. He can go kind of, you go, okay, Bo, here's what we're going to do on this play. You're going to go read option. You're going to go over to your first read, then you go here, or you're going to go read option, look the safety off, and then come back here. And if everything's really easily scripted up for him, he can really excel in that kind of environment. And so much like with Penix, he's going to need an offensive line in place. He's going to need a scheme that, to me, this is like a Niner kind of quarterback or a Dolphin kind of quarterback, where if it's really schemed up around the plays, really creative in what it's doing to set up, he can execute it perfectly. But if you ask him to go off script, if stuff starts going to hell, he's got to start, kind of get into a place of improvising, then he's just not the same, kind of player. But from a tool standpoint, size, mobility, arm strength, relative accuracy, he's got those items that he checks off the box. But I do see, as like I said, with all these guys now at this point, to me, they're more third round range.
Yeah. I don't know. Bo Nix was tough for me. I mean, he's having an amazing year. Let's be clear about that. If Oregon was undefeated and had they beaten Washington last month, I think he would be the Heisman frontrunner. But that one loss has kind of derailed it a little bit. He's still up there, and he could still win it if they win the Pac-12. Like he is his consistency is something else. Every game it feels like he's just performing. But I can't stop looking at him and thinking Taysom Hill.
Mm-hmm.
I look at him and I see, yeah, this works really well in college for this really good Oregon system under Dan Lanning, who's a really good coach. It works with this array of talent. He's got one of the best receivers in the country, by the way, in Troy Franklin. But in the NFL, it's going to be Taysom Hill, and Taysom Hill's a fun player, but you can't build your franchise around him.
It's definitely a pick that's going to require teams, I think, to have to build a really solid supporting cast around him. I say this though, Brendan, if you're talking about a guy that you bring into a team like ours, for instance, where they get to take over an offense like this with so many playmakers, and you're just having him distribute, and there's a lot of, theoretically, I know Walter's not doing this year, but you should be if you're an offensive coordinator with the Seattle Seahawks team, which is having a lot of easily schemed up things for your quarterback position. This is a guy to me that could fit in and flourish within that environment. If he doesn't have that, if he doesn't have the skill positions, if the offensive line is in place, if he doesn't have a good offensive scheme, I'm with you. I think there's not a lot there. But if you do give him that, I think he can be more than Taysom Hill as a passer specifically, where he does have a little bit more arm talent. Maybe not a ton more, but there is a little more arm talent in his ability to, put some touch on balls, ball placement, and general accuracy. I think he's got him licked on those spots. But yeah, I still do see him as a third round guy. Let's go to number 6. First, I have one more I want to show you on this one, Brendan, as well. Another one from Addis Shelble. Thank you for the $2 donation, Addison. He said, I placed a bid on Lockett Metalhawk on Facebook. I'm glad that you put that dono in so we can put a shout out to them and mention them,
Very
Brendan.
cool.
Very, very cool. Both me and Brendan on our separate channels, Fans for Good. It's a charity both me and Brendan have done some videos for, and we were going to be trying to bump up a little bit this month as they're going to be bidding on some Metal Hawk stuff. I can't see it on the shot here because we're tight right now, Brendan, but your dad was kind enough to make me one of these, and they're going to have a couple of them for auction with Tyler Lockett and Steve Largent. And so you can go over there now and still it's just, you can find them around their Facebook page. It's kind of the easiest ways. And you can see they got a website too, but fans with a Z for good. Thank you for mentioning that, Addison. And thanks to your dad for putting that up for auction for a great
Thank you, Addison. I appreciate that.
Okay. Sorry, I stopped you on your momentum there, but what was your next?
Okay, quarterback 6 for me. This is kind of my YOLO one. This is like I'm using my immunity idol here. I just like him.
Mm-hmm.
It's Joe Milton of Tennessee.
Okay.
A lot of people don't get this one, and they, point to some of his performances this year. And I think here's the thing to understand. If Joe Milton was having high production, he would probably be a top 10 pick. Because if he was actually playing at a really high level, like, say, Jaden Daniels, and he had that arm, and he had that mobility, and he had all these other things, it's like, that's the full package. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing with Joe Milton is you might be able to get him in the 3rd round or the 4th round, maybe even beyond that, I don't know, and groom him in your offense, and you're not going to have to make some blue chip investment in him. That's the fun of this, because he is so talented. So I actually have a 2nd round grade on this guy, but I think because he's not exactly playing lights out this year, you could probably get him in round 4, maybe even round 5. And that would get me excited. Like, you bring in a guy like that, I'm feeling like I've got at least a puncher's chance at a franchise quarterback with that very small investment.
That's a great point. And part of the thing with Joe going out this year is that it is going to be only going to be 1 year of starting year that you have to operate off of versus a lot of these guys that'll have 2 or 3 or 4. I mean, Bo Nix has played all the way back to Auburn. Penix has played a ton of football. These guys have had just a lot more under their belt to be able to show it out a little bit more versus Milton, who was just taking over this year for Hendon Hooker that was drafted last year out of Tennessee. He does, I think, have a plus arm, maybe probably the strongest arm in this draft overall. And there's a lot of wow factor to him. You're just looking for the consistency side of it to come up. I do have him as the top quarterback in the 4th round for me on the board as I have it listed. So I'm not that far off of where you're even at with him. I wouldn't mind if the Hawks locked in on him. I think that what I love in looking at a quarterback, and the part that this is maybe just my personal preference, some guys like blondes, some guys like brunettes. I like a quarterback with a nice big arm that can make all the throws. It's not the only thing. It's not just give me that. And there's other things, the ability to process and throw with anticipation and navigate a pocket, all those extra things. But this is one of those things where I don't like it when you go with those light tossing quarterbacks. People get enraptured by Brendan, and then they're mobile and, they have a snappy delivery and but he can't make every throw. So my offense is going to be restricted at one point or another by this kind of quarterback. Not going to happen with a guy like Joe Milton.
Right. So this is my immunity idol guy. This is the guy I just like.
Mulligan.
Yeah. Again, if he was playing at a high level, there's no way we'd be able to get him at all. I think he'd be gone before our first pick. Like if this guy was producing the way that, like I said, Jaden Daniels produces, then forget about it. It's over. It's all over. He would be up there with Drake Maye. But because he's not fully developed yet, you have this opportunity to get him at a much lower draft slot.
It's true. No, I think it's very true. It's very true. All right, we'll move on to my next guy, which is the guy that you just mentioned a second ago, which is going to be Jaden Daniels. Not Riley, Jaden Daniels of LSU. This is my guy who I think has really come on as strong as any quarterback this year. I would have maybe seen him last year as more of like a 5th round guy that you would have looked at. I just thought he was so skinny and so thin that he was not going to hold up at the next level. We've got that moment last year of Jalen Carter lifting him up on one arm off the field. But he's had a tremendous year, Brendan. The LSU supporting cast has not been tremendous around him. He's really having to overcome in an environment where it's under a lot of onslaught. He's having to be creative. He's having times where he can go between operating well within the pocket and hitting his throws and displaying plus arm strength, and then shows you the mobility and the escapability to also get out of the pocket on top of that. I would still love him to be about another 20 pounds heavier, but it is what it is when you draft him. These kids just seem to be like getting lighter and skinnier for some reason year after year. I don't know why. You used back in the day, you have your big Drew Bledsoe types, 6'4", 225. You didn't have to think about it. Now these guys come out and they're barely 200 pounds, and you're like, man, is that wishbone going to get snapped? I hope not. But he is held up well this year in the toughest conference there is, and he can make any NFL throw. He's got up plus mobility on the other side of it. Maybe not. He's gotten more accurate. I don't know if I would go out and say, well, he's super accurate, or that's even a hyper plus skill to him and what he's at. That's definitely a part to get better at. But another guy, again, I would put more into a 3rd round place.
Yeah, he's an honorable mention for me. I didn't put him in my top 10. I do have him at 11th. I'm okay with him in the 4th though. 4th round, I'd be all right with it. I'm like Tommy Lee Jones in Captain America. He's still skinny, but
He's skinny.
He's fun. He's a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff to like there. He's making NFL throws, which I didn't think he was able to do. I looked at him and I saw a guy who was a pure college quarterback. I don't think that's the case anymore.
No.
I will say he had a chance to make a big statement against Alabama this last week and didn't really do it. Did not play that well. Had one of his worst games, which, that's a missed opportunity. A big reason why people are high on Quinn Ewers right now is because he made his big statement against Alabama. So that was an unfortunate missed opportunity. But I would say that I look at Jaden Daniels as a round 4 guy, and QB 11. I'll be down with that.
Would you say also within that assessment, though, Texas might have a wee bit better of a team than LSU does?
Oh, easily. They've actually got 2 really good receivers in Texas, and they've got the
Tavondre Sweat and
Sanders, and Jalen Ford.
Yeah.
Don't forget Jalen Ford. He's good too.
Yeah.
Catalan. It's a very good team. Don't get me wrong. LSU's really not a good team.
No.
There's not a lot going on there.
Not much. Okay, so let's get to your next one. I know as we're getting down the depth on this quarterback list, let's keep it rolling.
Okay, so QB 7. This is a QB 7 here. I go Riley Leonard.
Hey, we found one we completely agree on this one with.
I got him fringe round 2, more likely round 3. I still really like him, but his season kind of went off the rails. He got hurt, and then he tried to play hurt, and it was awful. I appreciate the intentions of him trying to go out there in that state, but it was not good. And I don't know if he's coming back this year. I don't even know if he's going into the draft. I read an article a couple weeks ago with somebody saying he should transfer to Notre Dame for his final year of college because they're losing Hartman, and Notre Dame would probably give him more to work with than Duke does. So I think it's possible he doesn't declare, but I like his mobility. I like his size. I think he can make all the throws.
About Washington.
That'd be fun. I could get excited for that.
Sign me up for that. I mean, he's got some playmakers. Not like you're losing. You still bring back Polk and the running back next year, right? At least.
Yeah,
so.
and McMillan's probably coming back too because he just can't play this year. I don't think he wants to enter the draft after a season where he got hurt like 8 separate times.
I would think not. I would think not. What does he bring to the table, this Riley Leonard?
Well, I just look at him and I see a dual threat, somebody who is a real threat to do damage with his legs, not in the Quinn Ewers or the Cam Ward way, but in a more like a, oddly enough, Daniel Jones way. But I think he's a better prospect than Daniel Jones was. And Daniel Jones was the 6th overall pick. Now, I don't know if Daniel Jones should have been the 6th overall pick. I might say that that may have been a overdraft. But I look at Riley Leonard and I just see a guy who can do all those things, but I think he's got a better arm and I think he has a better understanding of how to use it. Duke is not exactly stacked with talent. They do have some guys. They've got a great left tackle in Graham Barton, but I think he's made it work there with substandard talent. Duke was on a roll until Leonard got hurt. They were on a roll. They were about to beat Notre Dame, and then Riley Leonard went down and everything went to hell. If he doesn't get hurt, we might be talking about a Duke team that's in the race for the college football playoff right now. I really do feel that way because they were hanging around with, I think it was Florida State, even with Riley Leonard limping around out there.
And that's
And
after beating Clemson, I think, at the start of the year, right?
that's right. And what I will say is that Duke protects him with a very good rushing attack. Even when Riley Leonard's out or Riley Leonard's playing hurt, they've been able to run the ball really well. So he does have that, but he doesn't have great receivers out there. So I look at that and I go, there's a lot of stuff here that I'm into. He's just kind of a good all-around prospect. And I'm, like I said, I'm kind of in that low round 2, high round 3 type range with him.
Yes, and I've got them about the same place. And of course, these guys, like I say, all these guys were in this stage of I've got a huge stack. I've kind of generally put them at third round. I might on a couple of them, like you've kind of lined. I might eventually, when we get through the post draft process, arc a few of these guys up a little bit higher. The more film I get a chance to really dive into them and look. And this is one of those guys that I really look forward to being able to do a much deeper dive on the complete set of his film this year and last year, even going back and looking at him because he has had some time there. I like your Daniel Jones comp. I think when it comes to it, I think the arm talent wise, I think Daniel Jones has a strong arm, but Riley has the better arm, and I feel like he can make the better assortment of passes, if that makes sense. You know, the layered throws, the touch passes, I need to put this out route to a particular spot. It's kind of like Daniel to me might have the flashier stuff a little bit. This guy's this guy's a little less flashier, but it's more workable. It's more applicable to the football field and getting an offense maximized, let's say, which I don't think Daniel Jones is going to maximize any offense. Another guy too, I think that I could see you spoke to Quinn Ewers. This is a guy beyond our assessment of it that could you not see be a guy that Schneider falls kind of head over heels for?
Yeah, he does have that kind of prototype look that he like the Josh Allen, which we know that Schneider loved. I think he really liked Mahomes. I think those were the main 2 guys he really liked.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that going on here. I don't know if it's that extreme, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's something I could see him going with. And again, late second, third round pick. One of our third round picks that we have in this draft, we take it with the Saints pick, let's say. This kid, it wouldn't be the worst of selections to go out there and take a look at. Like you say, though, probably 2 to 3 of these guys that we're talking about in this list are part of why we want to go a little deeper on this particular quarterback list than we're going to go with the other positions is because a couple of these guys are going to go back to school. So it's the NIL kicking in is going to have somebody going, I'll take the $5 million and just go back and do it that way. Let's go to your next one down. For me, it's Cam Ward, which we just talked about.
Yeah.
So who do you have?
And my QB8 is Bo Nix, who we already talked about. We can just get right through that.
Number 9 for you
is Jordan Travis, and he's actually making a play to start pushing up because he's starting to turn it on a little bit. And I was kind of cold on this guy for a while, but I'm starting to get it. He's really consistent. Seems like every game he's playing at a high level. Now, Florida State's schedule has been a joke this year. They haven't played anybody good. I think their best opponents have been Clemson and Duke with no Riley Leonard or hobbled Riley Leonard, whichever. So he hasn't had to face really good competition. But it seems like every game he's just bringing it. There is some dual threat stuff going on there with him. I like his mobility. I'm surprised with how good of an arm he has, given how small he is. Like him and JJ McCarthy, I look at them and I go, ugh. Because they're so small, I just assume they're not going to be able to make those throws, but they kind of can.
Yeah. No, they do find a way to get it done, even though you do look at them and you wonder about how they hold up at the next level. He was a guy that last year, to me, had some very much Doug Flutie kind of vibes to him going way back in that kind of machine where he can definitely get inventive in the pocket and improvise with the best of them. If you're looking for me, a guy who is the Russell Wilson of this draft, Brendan? Who is the guy that closely for you comps out to the closest amalgamation of Russell Wilson? There's not a Russell Pure here. I'm not saying that. But the closest guy to me might very well be a Jordan Travis.
That's actually really solid. Him and maybe Jaden Daniels are kind of like in that vein. And like Wilson, who was the 3rd round pick, I think Travis will go in round 3. And that's where I have him. I think that's about right.
Yeah. And I've got him just on the upper crust for me, the 4th round territory, but I have liked this kid quite a bit. As with a few of these guys, I would be the least bit unhappy if we end up making one of these guys our selection 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, because they all do have upside. They're all fun players. This kid's going to have multiple years of starting at the college quarterback, something that we've had a hard time getting at times a year. We mentioned about the Milton. Milton's kind of the outlier in this draft versus the Riley Leonards, the Jalen Daniels, the Bo Nix, the Spencer Rattler, and I think I skipped over one of mine, by the way. But these guys have multiple years of starting experience, which is very important, so that they're way more seasoned than you get on your average quarterback coming out of college, which means they're that much more pro ready to get on the football field and start to play versus needing to sit on the bench for a year.
Right.
My guy that I got, and I do love Jordan Travis. The guy I have, and in fact, I have him a couple of spaces ahead. I forgot to mention him. He's actually after my Bo Nix. So this would be a 3rd round guy still, and that would be Spencer Rattler. Highly controversial kind of guy out there from some, but here's where I've gotten with Spencer, and I've been around the bend with him, man. We've been talking about him for 3 years, Brendan. 3 years we've been talking about him. And he goes back to OSU, gets beat out at one point by Caleb Williams there at the end of his tenure there, and then goes down to South Carolina. And, he didn't take the easy way out on this, Brendan, I think, which would have been to say, go to Boston College, right? Go to some lesser conference and you don't play, and you can kind of beat up on the weak Nillies and look great. He went to a challenging place in South Carolina because South Carolina plays in the SEC, but they don't have a good supporting cast around him. And when you're in the SEC, we saw this last year with Kentucky. When you're a quarterback in the SEC and your supporting cast sucks and your offensive line sucks, it's very hard to play the position well. And with Rattler this year, of all these quarterbacks we're going to talk about, nobody has been under the pressure rates of Spencer Rattler this year. Nobody's dealt with that kind of situation like he has. And I'm not a big guy on Rattler as far as loving his body language and how he kind of carries himself. And I wonder about his personality. You talk about leadership. This is a guy that I would have those. I'd be wanting to do a lot of interviews in the room with this kid if I was a GM. But from an arm talent standpoint, the ability to make every throw in the book, good mobility, that he's been able to weather the storm there this year, and he's played pretty good, but he's played as well as you could ask to a guy to expect in those circumstances, and at times even elevated those around him. He's a guy I wonder about that we've not seen his best ball, not necessarily his fault because he's had to deal with that, but that he has maybe grown a bit as a player and started to rise a little bit. But I know a guy that's a little bit of a controversial figure.
Yeah, he would be an honorable mention for me. I have him in like the 4th or 5th round. Maybe he's QB 12, QB 13. I haven't been impressed with him this year, but his offensive line doesn't exist. It's a big mess, and he's had some good games.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. This is not a bad buy low, low investment that has a chance to really pan out. A lot of guys you get in the 4th and 5th round these days are the guys who do not have franchise quarterback upside. They're guys like Aiden O'Connell, right? Where you just hope they can be good backups.
That's right. Tyson Badgett.
Mm-hmm. Like Spencer Rattler, there's at least a little bit of upside there.
Agree. Totally agree. But that's where I'd be sitting now with it. One last guy let's talk about, then we'll bounce into these other positions here. Brendan is JJ McCarthy. You just mentioned him. Give me some of your notes on him. We both are going to be at the front of this being like, look, the build, we're not trusting that build. On the NFL level, he's at Michigan. That's a powerhouse right now. They have some linemen we'll be talking about here, I think, right in the upcoming that he gets to benefit from. JJ gets a lot of love out there, Brendan. Why does he get so much seemingly growing hype out there for, what I see on the field? Am I missing it with this guy?
I think it's just because Michigan blows out everybody they play, and McCarthy gets to play clean pretty much every single game he plays because his job is so easy.
Mm-hmm.
I will say he's got a nice arm for a guy that size, but I still look at him and I can't get there. I see a guy who is probably fringe day 2, more early day 3, like a round 4 guy. And he's one of those guys that, I don't know, I do think that if you were to make a list of the most important players on that Michigan Wolverine team, I feel like JJ McCarthy's like I don't know if he makes the top 8. I'll put it that way. Let's put it that way.
That's probably pretty fair, actually. I mean, I think you could definitely make an argument for it. So I think he's got a good arm for his size, but I don't know if I'd say it's a good arm, right? Says that's the thing. Wonderland. So you have a guy that's like slight of build and not necessarily full on NFL arm, good mobility, but he's not got Bo Nix mobility or Riley Leonard mobility. I don't think
it's more like Baker Mayfield mobility.
Yeah. Totally Baker Mayfield mobility. Absolutely that. So
shout out to Baker, by the way, playing pretty good.
Shout
out to Dave Canales, but
he's getting the most out of him. But
I don't know. JJ McCarthy, he's all right, but I mean, it's really close for me between a guy like him and a guy like Jaden Daniels. JJ seems safer. There just also seems to be a much lower ceiling. Yeah. Like this one, I don't know. I think that it's easy to get blinded by how good Michigan is this year. I think Michigan should be number 1 in the country.
Yeah, I agree. Now. I agree with you. And that's one of the big single points of this is with Jaden, even though he is slight, at least he's a little taller. I think he's got a stronger arm. And I think he's had to overcome more than McCarthy has with what he's got to work around there at Michigan. And that would really be they're very close players, like you say, but that would be to me the separating factor in which one I would take over the other if they were both very close in the draft to where they'd go. Brian Myers gives us a double dip of $2 donations. Thank you for that, Brian. I think you probably cut your message off when you're trying to drop this message, but he's got a question for you, Brendan, which is, Brendan, can your dad make those Zilla Hawk? What do we call those?
Metal Hawk.
Metal Hawk. Can you do a Metal Hawk throwback logo?
I think he can make pretty much anything as long as you can design it. And like if some of the stuff he's done is pretty exotic, pretty out there. So I would say yes, he can definitely do that if that's what you want.
Absolutely. Anything for the right price, Brian, for the right price. Thank you, brother, for the dono.
Right.
All right, let's move over to, and we're going to have a couple positions here, positional groupings. We're not going to go as deep into, and most of these are going to be, as we go forward, folks, kind of 3-man looks, that our top 3 on the board here.
Yeah. Lightning round,
as we say. But we're going to have positional groups like this running back one where Hawks are not likely to draft a guy high. They've taken 2 second-round running backs. If we're going to take one, it's going to be later on, and that we don't know who the later on backs are going to be at this point.
Frank Gore Jr.
Yeah, Frank Gore Jr. Exactly. So, or who's that? Shipley or whatever.
Oh, the Clemson guy,
Clemson kid. So just the top 3 backs. We'll just do a little bit of a lightning round, like you say, with this on these ones. So let's go with. Give me your first back.
TreVeyon Henderson, round 2 grade.
TreVeyon Henderson. What stands out to him and what you like about his game?
This is the Ohio State guy. I like his. I feel like he's a good all-around back, generally speaking. Again, I haven't really looked at the running backs super close so far this year, but I do think that he's probably the most well-rounded back in this class. I like the fact that he's not too light despite being kind of short. He's a good receiver out of the backfield. He's had some really good games receiving so far this year, and he was really good as a receiver in 2021 as well. I think that if you take a look at what he did in 2021, because he was not healthy last year, he was pretty dominant, actually. He was putting up almost like pretty close to Dalvin Cook at Florida State numbers, because that was the true dominance. But he's kind of back to that form so far this year, although he is missing some games. Injuries have to be a bit of a concern here. He's missed significant time 2 years in a row now. But when he's out there, he kind of puts a little bit of everything on the table, I feel like.
Yeah, I like him. I do like him. I have him more in the 3rd roundish range for me. He's very shifty. I think the way you talked about him being a complete back is true. There's not really a one sexy trait about him that stands out. It's sort of like he's just a good complete back. Kind of gives you a little everything. The injury thing I think is a concern because he's not the biggest of dudes. You know, he's a little bit slight. And I think that contributes to a little bit of him getting beat up. He's also not as much, I think, an inside runner. Maye and Sanders there for the Ohio State. The other back they use there is their guy that they use in between the tackles. Especially if you're ever considering him for Seattle here, it'd be one to be tough because just not that's the thing that holds him back for me on being like a 2nd-round guy. He's got some great explosion though. My number 2 guy would be Blake, or my number 1 guy would be Blake Corum out of Michigan, who's had back-to-back seasons now of excellent production for them. I see him, Brendan, as a mini Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley minus about 3 inches in height, 4 inches in height. He's well built to the ground. He can change direction on a dime, stop and start on and get back up with his acceleration like nothing else. His contact balance is excellent. He's harder to bring down despite being a little bit of a smaller back. Maybe he doesn't have the complete home run hitting speed out there from the position, but a guy that's going to be able to create yards for himself at the next level, even if you don't always have it blocked up.
Yeah, Blake Corum, not too much of a receiving back, but he's an excellent bell cow. He's been a bell cow for Michigan for a couple years. Awesome burst, awesome speed, very, very creative in the open field. Very, very creative in setting up big plays using his blockers. A lot of stuff to like there with Blake as well. I have him in the same area as Henderson. I have him as a round 2 guy as well.
Yeah.
I don't think any running back's going to go in the first round this year. I'll say that.
No, I don't believe so either. It'll be second round all day this year. Who's your number 2 back?
Blake Corum.
Blake Corum. Awesome. So we got that one done. Mine is going to be Rocket Sanders. I think who was your third?
Yes, my third.
So mine, this all pairs nicely, Brendan. So mine's going to be Rocket Sanders from Arkansas, 6'2", 237. That's a big boy, Brendan. Raheim, I think he reminds me, and it's always the lazy thing I talk about, Brendan, where you comp a guy that's played at the program prior. It's like it's so easy because you've seen the other jersey before, but he reminds me so much of Darren McFadden, kid that came out of the day back out in Arkansas. He's got these long strides, 1,400 yards in 2022. He's had another very good year here so far to kick things off. You get him in the open field, he's gone, man. And he's a little bit like in that vein of a Derrick Henry, where he is so big that you get him up in the open field and they get their full head of steam. You try to grab him and you just kind of fall off of him, right? So you have to kind of just tackle him before they can get to that full head of steam. The issue with him, though, is he actually has some unique burst for being such a long-legged guy. He actually can really get up to speed really fast. I really like his upside. Uniquely built running back. We've had so many of these backs in recent years, like your Jahmyr Gibbs types or a chain types, 180, 190 pounds. I think this guy's legit 230, 235. And if he goes to the combine and goes out at 235, running a 4.45 even, he might be the one guy of this list that we talk about because of that physical build that can push himself up a little bit in this draft, even where I got him, which is the second round.
Yeah, I have him third. I have him as the round 2 guy as well. Great combination of size and speed. Rare combination of size and speed. Doesn't offer a ton in terms of pass catching. I think his pass catching skills are pretty rudimentary. Fumbling, which is, that can become a problem. We'll see where it goes. But I like him a lot as well. I don't like him enough to draft him in our circumstance, but I do put a second round grade on him.
He's a good player. It'll be interesting to see where he does go, but not many built like him. My only last guy really quickly put in, because we covered your 3, is Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin. Another big back, very productive. He really does a good job of running downhill. Really unusual burst for a guy that is as big as him. I call him a cross between Derrick Henry and Fournette. This guy might be 240. He might even be bigger than Rocket, to be honest with you, and add another 10 pounds. He's just a bully runner out there, Brendan. Really fun back to watch if you want a physical back that can just wear a defense out. This guy can do it. And another guy that I like in the second round because I think he's going to run a good 40, and with his physicality that he puts into play, there's going to be teams that's really going to resonate with when it comes to draft time.
Yep.
Let's go. Let's keep this on moving, Brett, into another position we're not going to spend a lot of time with, because the Hawks have drafted a lot of wide receivers. We're deep as hell at wide receiver. We're not taking a wide receiver in the first, second, or third round. So looking at the top 3 doesn't make a ton of sense to a degree here. We'll give quick little notes on these guys, Brendan. First guy who I know you and I both agree with, Marvin Harrison Jr. What can be said about him that hasn't been said?
Probably the best receiver prospect since Calvin Johnson.
I think that's fair. I think that's the best way to put it with it.
Yeah. The only thing with him is it feels like there is a little bit of rawness, but I think that you give him a year in the NFL, he's going to be the complete package. There's going to be nothing that he doesn't bring to the table as a receiver. I have him as a top 5 guy I think I have him at either number 2 or number 3 overall. I think my first big board had him at number 2. But yeah, he is special.
He's my big board number 2 player. Special, Hall of Fame talent. He'll be doing if he's long, of course, paired with the right quarterback, he'll be doing everything that Jamar Chase is doing in the league. The hype is real on the kid. There's nothing I can pick apart about it. When Brian Hartline, the coach, said that, this is the best of the bunch that's come out of that crew in the last few years, from Michael Thomas's to Terry McLaurin's, who will play this week against Washington, to Jackson Smith and Jigba. This is the best of the bunch, they say, without even blinking. He's awesome. Number 2 for you.
My number 2 is Emeka Egbuka, the other Ohio State guy. It's kind of tough, admittedly. It's kind of tough because you've got 2 hyper elite receivers on the same team. And this year they don't have the best quarterback. I'll say that, right? They got Kyle McCord, who will be lucky to get drafted. But he's another guy who's like a prototype. He's got great size. He's got great height. He's fast. I like the way that he plays in terms of running after the catch, how aggressive he is. He's got long arms. He's got great footwork. I think that some of the holes in his game needs to get better at contested catches. There are some concentration issues with him dropping the ball every now and then. That's the one major issue that I see with him right now. But he's a great athlete. He played cornerback when he was in high school, which has actually really helped his instincts as a receiver. So I go Egbuka. I have a top, I think I had a top 15 grade on him.
And I've got Egbuka myself down about second round place. I do like him a lot. And I like the physicality, and his physicality through the route, where you can't knock him off his spot. He's going to get to where he wants to get to. But the hands, I think it's one of the reasons he was originally kind of a defensive back, because their person went and saw the hands and went, okay, you're a defensive back. A little bit of the lack of production this year out of him, though I will admit some of this is going from CJ Stroud to the quarterback position where it is at. Still, nonetheless, production's not been necessarily top notch this year from him on the other side of it. My number 2 guy instead would be Romeo Ndunzie, who has brought himself up from what I had as a high second round grade this offseason to a first round grade. I don't think that there's anything that he can't do at the next level, including he brings size to the play that's been sometimes a missing thing in some of these receivers in recent years. Your Tank Dells, your Jordan Addisons, even these top realm guys that are 5'9", 5'10". He gives you actually that height, that size, that ability to go up and get the contested catches and run any route in the book, and even give you some yak in addition to it. I love Romeo Ndunzie and what he brings. He may not have as much of a startling upside that you'd look for in a first round receiver, but he gives you, to me, a clean upside. I know what I'm getting. I know his ceiling and where his floor is at, and you can feel very comfortable with this pick. I'm not saying high first round pick, probably later first round, but I would put a first round grade on Romeo.
Yeah. Of course, I love Rome as well. I'll be honest. I thought McMillan was better. I really liked McMillan a little bit more, and I thought McMillan had the superstar potential, but it's been a lost year for McMillan. So I don't know if I was right on that or not.
You could be proven right on that if McMillan comes back and he might have that. I'm with you. He might have that upside over the top of him. It's just you ding Jalen just for not being able to play, really, if he's going to declare.
So yeah, I like Rome. He's definitely on my board. He's like late round 1, early round 2 guy for me. I do not have him listed in the top 3 though, and that's all I have here. So
no worries. Who was your third?
Keon Coleman, the Florida State guy, top 20 grade. I really like him. Size, you got to love that size. Got the big playability, great after the catch. Really, really good at the little nuances of running routes at the NFL level. Great at like using like deceptive footwork and then suddenly building up to speed to blow past a defensive back. Great acceleration. Really, really impressed with Coleman.
Yeah, he's the complete package at the receiver position. I as well have him as my number 3 guy on my board. I as well would put a top 20 pick on him. I think both Romeo and him would be, to me, top 20 guys, or somewhere in that neighborhood. Maybe top 25. We want to get technical just to be sure I'm in the right phase of this. But his catch radius is insane. I don't think there's another receiver in this sport this year that's going to have more highlight catches than Keon Coleman's going to have. I mean, the one-handers, the ability to catch it falling away, falling down, feet in bounds. He's been pretty phenomenal in that element of it. And just whoever drafts him is going to have a highlight reel of tape to go through. I don't know if he'll go and be a superstar or star receiver, but he's got that to him, and runs really good routes, good hands too, in addition to that, like Coleman.
Yeah.
All right, let's turn the page here to the tight end position, and we're both going to be in agreement, I think, at the start of this one. The Hawks are going to need a tight end, it looks like, Brendan. I don't think that we're going to be able to sign both of our guys, and maybe not even two of our guys. We might end up drafting two guys this year when it's all said and done. First guy out the gate's not going to be a guy we're going to have a chance at, and that's going to be Brock Bowers out of Georgia.
Yeah, I think we've got some consensus here. This is, to me, a top 5 guy. I have him 4 on my big board. He's the, I mean, I know sometimes it sounds like I'm doing the hyperbole thing that the talking heads do when talking about sports, but I really do think this might be the best tight end prospect ever. He is the full package. I think he's a better prospect than Kyle Pitts. I think he's a better prospect than Vernon Davis. I think he's a better prospect than, I don't know how you compare him to a guy like Mike Ditka or Mark Bavaro, but in terms of being a pure prospect, I think Brock Bowers might be the best tight end prospect we've ever seen. He just has everything checked.
Boy, does he ever. And he is my number 3 prospect on my board for me. So that tells you where I stand on him as well. He had a game this year, I can't remember who it was, where he saved Georgia's season. Like, it was a game where nothing was working right, and they just had to feed it to him. And he carried the day for him, put on the Superman cape, and went to flying. He's had a little bit of an injuries that he's been out for now for some of the year. He's trying to fight back with. That's not going to affect his draft status. Like Brendan just said, I believe he's the at the very least best tight end prospect that we've seen coming out in 10 years. The complete deal. He is a monster as a blocker. He catches like Gronk in the pass catching game. His hands are like they got stickum on it. Sensational player, beastie as hell. You want to be a mauling team that can he gives it to y'all. He gives you everything you could want from the position. I love him as a player. He's even got a tight end name with Brock Bowers. Is there more of a tight end name that you've ever seen than that? Who's your number 2?
I think it's gotta be Jaheim Sanders of Texas, although his production has been on a milk carton ever since Ewers went down.
Yeah.
He's and actually I should say that Bowers actually got hurt, so he's been on a milk carton too.
Yeah.
Although in his case, I'm not worried about it or anything.
No.
But Sanders had something to prove this year, and in parts he has. He's been a really good big play threat this year, which is something that he wasn't really in previous years. I think in previous years he would average like 10 yards a catch. This year, I think it's more like 18 or 19. So he's had some really big games. He's had some standout games. He's not a bad blocker either. He's a little bit of a dual threat tight end, although I think he's more of a threat as a receiver. Not necessarily somebody who's going to make a ton of things happen, breaking tackles or anything like that down the field, I feel like. But I do like him enough to have him in that late round 1, early round 2 kind of range of things. And I think he's the only other like game-breaking tight end in this draft that I feel really good about.
Yeah, we are of alignment here. I have a second round grade on Jaheim Sanders, and I think that he is a lot better of a tight end prospect that we've been looking at in the last couple of years at times, because he does give you some exciting traits, but then some complete traits too. Like, he can run block, I think, pretty well. He can seal the edge as a blocker out there in the run game. He's got a big enough legit size body out there that he can roll, and he's pretty physical. Like you say, I think he's that H-back type of tight end. So I think if you drafted him, this is your Noah Fant replacement. Fant being more of your H-back. You can do both. You're not just asking the guy like you might in certain offenses to be a pure H or be a pure inline guy. The Seahawks ask their guys to be both. But this guy, you would lean in to have more snaps with him, probably in that sort of H-back kind of role as the tight end, as a first and foremost position. Really strong hands, plus speed, athletic Brendan. Can make some tough catches and hang on despite contact, because he's got that size to him too. He can absorb contact. Really like Sanders quite a bit. He's a good player, I think, in the second round.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got a big time donation. Let me acknowledge this. Upo coming in with a $50 drop. My goodness, Upo. Thank you for that $50 donation, brother. That is very, very kind of you for doing that. He says, no comment, just appreciate listening to the conversation. I could talk and listen to prospect talk all day. Agree with some, not with others, but always respect y'all's opinions. Appreciate that you put in the work to get these viewpoints. Well, thank you very, very much, Upo. And I'm glad to hear on top of the donation, both me and Brendan are glad to hear you guys are liking these kind of shows, because this is something we weren't sure if this would be necessarily something that would resonate. We knew there wouldn't be for everybody, but we knew for those that it would be for, would be really for. And it's something that we get a lot of requests for from our subscribers to do these kind of shows and way out ahead of the draft, because we, of course, do super deep dives as we get to the draft. But we want to start to get ahead of this. And you might be on those ones where we disagree, Yupo. You might end up being the one right on them. We might end up landing on your territory, because this will be an evolving process for both me and Brendan. And what makes me sure we say that is, we're data guys. We're going to have an opinion, but the more data that comes in, we're going to continue and expand off of that. And it's going to change our viewpoints on guys and positions and stuff on it. But I'm glad you like it, man. And thank you so very much for the $50 donation. You are really, really kind for that. And you've done a lot of donations and supports to both of our channels, Upo. No doubt about that too, as well. So I want you to know I appreciate that. And man, we'll keep these going. I think the next one we'll be doing is probably the college football season's wrapping up, and get our final dive on where they're at the end of the season.
Right.
And go from there. But thank you, man. Very, very kind of you for doing that. Jeez. $50,
thank you,
Brendan. Thank you. Never is enough, Brendan. I can never feels like enough on that with $50 drops. Taker610, thank you for the $5 drop. He says, I just saw a funny post on Facebook saying collectively the NFC West scored 6 points in week 9. Ouch. Ha ha ha. How much of Jalen Carter have you guys watched?
Decent amount. I mean, Philly's on TV a lot because they're a good team. But a pretty decent amount when he's in the game, you definitely notice. But I haven't isolated him specifically, no.
Yeah, I haven't gone to the Eagles tape to see what he's doing, snap in and snap out. What I can say is he's been tremendously efficient with the snaps he's been given, and he's being asked to do more as a pass rusher than as a run stuffer. They're going early downs with Fletcher and Jordan Davis down there, and those guys hold it up there. Then he comes in as a pass rusher. So he is fitting to a certain role. He's being highly rotated out, and he does have an ankle injury, which is kind of notable because one of the things with Carter last year was, of course, he had ankle injury that held him back last season in college as well. So something to maybe track about where that lands with him as we go forward. But I think he was out this past game, if I'm not mistaken.
He missed a game. I don't think it was the most recent game because No, he was definitely in the last game because I remember he jumped off sides on the Cowboys' final drive where they almost won the game.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So he's played tremendous. If you look at PFF markers, Taker, he's top 3, top 4 rated defensive tackle in the sport right now. But that is with an asterisk a little bit, because if you look at the other 3 guys around him, or the other 5, 6 guys around him, he's the guy with the least amount of snap counts of those other guys at the top of that PFF board. So worth factoring in. And if we're taking about who's been the most productive player to me for what they gave you, to me, Witherspoon's been the more productive player because he plays 100% of the snaps.
Yeah. And also, I think we need Witherspoon more than we need Carter.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
I agree.
That's, every team individually. Our defensive line's been pretty good this year overall. Obviously, it was not so much on Sunday. Yeah. But overall, our defensive line's been good. But we had that one game where we didn't have Witherspoon, and it was a complete disaster in the secondary. So I look at that and I go, I think we made the right call on just on those grounds.
Yeah, agreed. And Carter's good too, but I would give the edge in myself just to Witherspoon as it stands right now. Thank you, Taker, and Upo. Thank you again, man. I salute you, sir, for that huge $50 donation drop. You guys are very kind here on the channel. Let's keep this rolling. I think we might be agreeing on this next one, Brendan. I thought we might be dead. Let's see here. Who's your third tight end on your board?
I'm going with Cade Stover, one of my personal favorites in this draft. I'm not going to go crazy with it. I do view him as a round 3 guy. He's not really explosive. He's not going to make 8 people miss every time he catches the ball. He's not going to run people over, but he is a reliable, solid pass catcher. He can play in line. He has some stuff to work on as a blocker, but I do think that he's a better blocker than a vast majority of these college tight ends these days that are basically receivers. A lot of these guys basically play wide receiver. So Cade Stover, if you lose Will Dissly this offseason, to me, this is about as close as you're going to get to Will Dissly in this draft.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way of putting it. He is my third tight end currently on my board as well. I have a third round grade put on him as well. So we're both fully in agreement there. Not very explosive. He's not going to be a sharp route runner from the tight end position. He is your inline kind of guy that you're going to ask to just get down and dirty and physical down there at the line of scrimmage. And, when you do have him catch, there'll be guys hanging all off of him and he'll make those contested catches and he's not, creating separation in the route. But he's got some stuff he brings to the table as well. And you need these kind of guys in your offense, like we've needed a Will Disley in our offense to make it go. They're kind of the glue guys in there at times. And it's an option here if we're looking to move off Disley, who I think we save $6-7 million, something like that, by moving off of him.
I think it's 7.
Yeah, this absolutely then gives you a much cheaper option. You get maybe third or fourth round. And as you said, Brendan, looking at some of these other guys that are deeper in the tight end group, a lot of the kind of, real thinly built, basically receiver types through what I've seen through some of the more the depths of this tight end group. I've looked at quite a bit of these guys and just very thin and very, just kind of almost quasi receivers, really.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's keep it moving here to left tackle. Are we doing it just by tackles or were we going by?
I did left tackle and right tackle individually.
Let's do that then. Let's start out with our first left tackle for you on the board.
Yeah, and this is going to be another quick one because I don't think we're drafting the left tackle.
Agreed. Yeah.
But we do have a really good one at the top here. It's Ole Fashanu, who I have in my top 5. I think he is a pretty generational, not to put him over some of the other top guys recently, but I think he's on their level. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I like him a lot. He's got, I think, still some more upside than what he's shown here at Penn State. I think coming into this year, people thought it would be just a little bit better. It's been good. It's been good to great. But people were looking for, I think, that dominant level, like you're talking about, where he was last year, were showing the signs of having that sort of maybe a generational look to him. I don't know if he's quite gotten there. I have a top 10 grade on him. He is my best left tackle on my board, the best tackle purely, or maybe the best tackle purely on my board, just bar none. But he is a guy that is, I think, just had a little, it's a very, just a little itty bitty dip this year in performance. But look, he's going to give you everything you want. Big, long, he can move his feet. He always is able to stay in front of the defenders no matter what. He just has a knack for being able to find it, on top of being just really athletic and keeping his feet always active. Got good power and strength in the run game too, Brendan. Good complete player. You're not going to go wrong with this guy. You don't have any of the risk, I don't think, with Olu that you have with Evan Neal, Ekawanu, and even Charles Cross a couple of years ago. Cross is rounded out into fine shape, but like as we've seen with Neal and Ekawanu, they've had some stuff in their game that you worried about coming out that you've continued to be worried about as they've now played. I think with Olu, you have a lot more certainty about his floor too, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's better than those guys pretty clearly. I think that he's I mean, as far as prospect goes, I would put him like in that DeBrickashaw Ferguson type of level.
I think that's fair. Yeah,
absolutely. Like really, really high. Maybe not. I'm
not
sure
it's not Walter Jones, but DeBrickashaw.
Yeah, this is not Walter Jones. This is not Orlando Pace, but it's very, very good.
Yeah, you can make it work. Who's our number 2?
I got Joe Alt of Notre Dame. Really, really athletic guy for his size. Like phenomenal athleticism for a guy who's 315. The only issues with him really are technique, and maybe he's a little too tall. He's 6'8". Like that's a little bit concerning, but if he can get the technique down, like the balance, hand technique, the ability to bend at the waist enough to, or excuse me, not bend at the waist and still be able to hold up. If he can figure it out, I think he's also a really, really good prospect. I put him in the top 10.
He's my number 2 tight end in this draft as well. Do you buy my player? My player comp is Andre Whitworth.
Okay, I dig it. I dig it.
Monstrous size tackle, strong as an ox, and he's definitely kind of figured out how to play with that size he's got. He moves really well, but like you say, the balance part does come and go. When he's under balance and control, you can see it. You can see how it's going to set up at the next level. When he can get a little bit wonky at times when the feet don't set right, he can get a little out of bounds. But look, he's I think the second highest rated PFF tackle in the sport this year. Complete tackle in every way. Technically, absolutely, really, really nice and refined with how he puts his hands together, how his feet work up through with his hands together in delivering that punch, maximizing out his power. I really do like Joe Alt, a guy like I would put as a top 10 first round grade on him as well. Who be the number 3?
Well, I had Latham, but I guess he's playing right tackle, and it sounds like he may end up being a right tackle. So I guess maybe the guy would be Amarius Mims of Georgia.
Now, Mims
I think he's playing left.
He's playing right tackle too.
Oh, he is. Okay. Then it's actually tough. I don't know then.
How about Jordan Morgan?
Jordan Morgan. I do like him. I got to take a look at some of these names here. Actually, this is tough. My bad. I thought Mims played on the left. I got confused, I guess. Patrick Paul or Jordan Morgan.
Mims might be a guy able to play on the left tackle. He's the unusual guy that if you look at Mims, he's like, it's like somebody's done a Madden build a player with a tackle. Like the way he's built and how he moves, like could be a guy the unusual guy that plays right tackle at college who could go to left at the pro level and it wouldn't be so crazy, right? Like those usually you go, wait, no, that's not going to work. But like he's the guy that because he is so like, he's kind of built differently a little bit. And with him, it's the rawness factor, I think, for me with Mims, just him getting that technical refinement we see sometimes with Joe Alt or times you're not necessarily getting there with Mims to me, but
yeah.
He might.
I'm still wondering if Morgan slides inside at the NFL level. So I kind of view him as an interior guy potentially, but if he is a tackle, you're probably right. I guess it could be him or Patrick Paul, the Houston guy.
I think they're valid questions with Morgan bouncing in. He is my third guy for whatever it's worth. I think that watching, he had the battle there with Trice, and they had a good fight over that game. And then when Arizona Arizona faced Washington this year, right? They fought, haven't they? Yeah. So I'm remembering the game right. They went mano a mano in that game. Trice got him a little bit earlier. Morgan held up over the course of that game. It was one I was kind of watching a little bit closer for in their fight, Brendan, because I like Trice a lot. And that gave John Morgan a true battle there at left tackle to see if he could hold up. And I thought I saw enough from him athletically and how he moved in space to be able to make it happen. Is he going to be a star at the level? Do I have a first round grade on him? No. Do I see him more late second round as it stands right now? Yeah. But I do like where he is. And I think he's got enough juice as a player to be that third guy for me.
Yeah. Okay. I'm definitely not against that if he does end up staying outside.
Let's flip it on over to right tackle. Who is your first right tackle on the board?
I guess it would be Latham, because if we're saying he's a right tackle, then I think I'm going to go JC Latham. I view him as a first round guy if a team decides they want to spend a first round pick on a right tackle, which I think is starting to become in vogue. I think teams are starting to look at right tackle as being a really valuable position. So I feel like he does go in that first round. He's got that Alabama stock too. That's going to help. I have him as a first round guy.
Yeah, I mean, hell, you want to look. We don't have to go back but 2 years to find a Alabama right tackle taken in the first round in Evan Neal, and taken high in the first round. If you go back to last year, Darnell Wright, who is going to be my comp for JC Latham, is Darnell Wright, the kid out of Tennessee that went to the Bears at like 13. So I think we are moving into the age where right tackles can be taken in the first round. I love his game. Big man with a huge base, wonderful kick, step, slide. I wouldn't go as far as to say his light feet. This is why he's on the right side versus the left side, Brendan, and why I was kind of pushing back against the thought of him playing any kind of on the left is, for a right tackle, he's bouncy. For a right tackle, he's got light feet. But if you moved him over to left tackle, now he's kind of got a little bit more of the Stonage-ish sort of feet in how you'd view him over the left blind side. But he's always in control in his past pro reps, nearly equally as good to me as a run blocker. Big, long, you're not getting around him. Very, very technically refined for the position, very clean as a player. Guy that very much you just feel like you know what you're getting in this guy. Part of why I like the Darnell Wright comparison. But like Darnell, he's just almost as wide as a house. It's like just getting around him alone is almost a chore in itself.
Yeah, I go with that. So And then I guess the second guy would have to be Mims, because I just mentioned him. I think he's another guy who's got more or less a first-round grade on him.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my right tackle too.
I think Mims is going to get in the first round, even if the tape doesn't always fit to it, because people will say we can fix the technical stuff. He's bringing so much physical potential to play. And it's not just the way he's built, but the way he can move, that you're going to see him taken in the first round. I do have Mims as my third guy, but it's not really as much a declaration about how I look down. He's a first round guy to me. It's much about this other guy and how he jumped out to me on the tape and stood out. And that's going to be Talise Fuanga out of Oregon State. When I watched him move for a man his size, just nobody should move like that at that size. Nobody should be that fluid, that athletic. He's so smooth, and it sometimes makes it look kind of so easy out there off that right side versus some of these other tackles that sometimes really are just out there just fighting through every rep to kind of make it happen. I just think that in this day and age, athletic offensive linemen, he's got just nice size, great length. Those kind of guys go in the first round. They're just too hard to find. You can find the guys that are big or wide, or like JC Latham, big, moves his feet well enough. This guy's a guy that is much like Mims a little bit to me, can maybe be a guy that you can flash over to the left side in a pinch with how well he moves over there on that right side. And he's got the power as well to go with it. I didn't see a lot of flaws in his game, and watching him on the tape with what I saw with him out of Oregon State, I'm really, really high in Fuanga.
Yeah, Fuaga's my number 3 now at this point, because initially I had him listed as a guard, but I think you kind of convinced me that he's going to be able to stay at right tackle. And if he is a right tackle, then I do have him as right tackle 3. I do have him in the second round still, but close to that first round. So I think we just flip those two guys, 2 and 3, and we're in alignment on that side.
There we go. So we got the tackles knocked out. Honorable mention for me for Blake Fisher. Honorable mention for you, also Blake Fisher.
Yes, he would be my next guy.
He's a good player. We won't go too far into him because, again, we're not going to be looking at these tackles too much because the Hawks are not likely to take one. I think you still have Stone and Jake still able to come back for another year until they're free agents.
Well, Perhan's going to be a restricted free agent, so you can bring him back super cheap.
But Stone's definitely under at least one more year, I believe. Yes. He's only been through 3, so probably not likely. One position we are likely to look at, Brendan, when we're going to be maybe likely to look at a couple of guys, will be the guard position, and specifically at the forefront of that with Bradford's ascent this year over the right guard position. The left guard is looking like the one that might be in the target crosshairs for our Seattle Seahawks in this draft. Who is your number 1 guard in this draft? If your Seattle Seahawks could take the best guard in this draft to fit in right there between Cross and maybe Oluwatimi there for the future, who are you grabbing?
Well, I got a first round grade on 2 guys.
Ooh.
First guy, and these guys are both playing tackle right now, but I think they slide inside when they get to the NFL. Let's start with Graham Barton of Duke. Just a really rock solid guy, part of a great dominant rushing attack they've got over there. I think once he slides inside, you're going to see his weaknesses as a player really fade away, because right now you do see a little bit of he can't quite keep up with the edge rushers, but you slide him inside, he'll have no problems with that. So I think he is kind of a prototypical left guard for the modern NFL in this offense.
Agreed. He gives you a versatility that we're not going to get from the other guy we're going to talk here, even though I think the other guy we're talking about also is playing left tackle. I think Barton, you do get him in a pinch, and he could probably play just about everywhere on the offensive line. His best spot, I think, will be left guard. He can be a guy to maybe even give you Pro Bowl level of play there at guard when you kick him into that point. But in a pinch, if you find yourself to where you're decimated on a line and you got to move some parts around, he can be moved around over there and fit in, which does help his value out. I do have him as my number 2 guard in this draft. I do have him in the second round because I just don't think he provides kind of the dominance that I see on tape I'd like to see for a guy to take him in the first round. But can't deny his flexibility. Can't deny we haven't maybe gotten to see him at his best position in college because of the fact he's had to play left tackle. And that's where this becomes a little bit projection with him a bit. But I love his play, Brendan. A heady player, smart player, can move in space, athletic as hell. I mean, there's a lot of these guards that have kicked inside. We're playing one this week, Sam Cosmi, kid that was a great right tackle out of Texas who the Commanders kicked inside to guard. Similar kind of thing you're going to do here with Graham Barton, and a lot of teams do this as a pathway to get yourself more athletic guys at the left guard position, and that's been one of the big problems with Damian Lewis here at the forefront or any left guard we've had there recently is a lack of mobility and athleticism to be able to move in space.
Yeah, I agree.
Number 2 on your list.
That would be the other round 1 guy, Cooper Bebe. I think both these guys are very, very close. And Cooper Bebe's actually kind of sliding back and forth between tackle and guard. I've noticed if you look at his PFF chart, you can see that he's playing some tackle, some guard for that team, depending on what they need. I've watched a couple of Kansas State games where you can see him going back and forth. He's given up a little bit more. He's been a little sloppier than Barton this year, I think, in pass protection. But again, he's another guy that is going to slide inside, and his issues with agility and lateral quickness are not going to matter quite as much. I think he's going to be plenty agile for a guard in the NFL. And I look at him very similarly to how I look at Graham Barton.
Yeah, I'm very, very high on Bebe. Been high on him. I would have thought he would have been the best guard coming out of last year's draft, in my opinion. And I think he is getting moved out to tackle a little bit more this year than he was last year. And when you see him at guard and you're operating in there, he's comfortable. He fits. His size is plus. His movement abilities are plus. He's got a great understanding of how to play the position and his refinement of it. And his hands hit the right spot. He's never out wide. He bullies guys on the football field at the second level. He's a finisher. A very complete game Bebe brings to the table, and I would love to see the Hawks draft him on draft day. If we take him in the first round, in the late first round, I'll be doing handstands because I've been watching him for a couple of years, and I trust a lot in this particular assessment of this particular player that he is going to be a very good NFL player at the next level.
I agree. I would love to have either guy at the end of round 1.
Yeah, me too. I'm not Barton as well. Don't get me wrong. Barton, I'm currently investment in the offensive line is great, especially when you're investing in what I would consider to be clean, not clean prospects, but fairly clean prospects, and where there's not as much risk as you might have in other positions. You know what you're kind of getting. And that's not to say empty upside. You have upside with what you're getting. Who is your number 3 left guard in this draft?
This is another guy who's currently playing tackle, but I think he slides inside. Jaheim Cohen of the Miami Hurricanes. I've had my eye on this guy since last year. He played for Alabama last year, I believe. So it was a transfer to Miami. He's playing pretty well over there. Miami, a lot of games this year, they've been dominant running the ball. I think when he slides inside, his mobility issues will be cleared up. He's plenty mobile enough to slide inside. I really like his ability to move in space as far as being a guard goes. That's the thing that stands out to me. So I think he's going to be a good fit for this offense.
I like Mr. Cohen as well quite a bit. I do have a little bit of as he's my 4th guy rather than my 3rd guy on my list. I do see him as a pass blocking left guard who, like you say, would be a pure scheme fit for what we want to do from a mobility athletic standpoint. Pull back across the formation, get out into the second level, get out in the screen game and help to improve that. A guy like Cohen would be able to bring a lot to the table to help you in that area of things. He does, I think, struggle a little bit in the run game that has me that's where I dinged a little bit in taking him from being a 2nd round prospect to a 3rd round prospect, is I wonder if there's going to be a little bit of a inconsistency there that you get there from him in the run game. But some of that might be mitigated if he can do some of the mobility run game stuff that's not about just driving a guy off the ball and more about hitting your reach block or getting to that second level block. And so that's not as maybe a big of a defining issue, because I think you're right to look at him at the value you've placed on him being the mobility. And that's what in these linemen now we've got to put at the forefront a bit, and who we're looking at. Can you move? Can you move in space? That's what this offense is about, especially taking better advantage of the lateral portions of this offense, the horizontal portions and not the vertical portions of this offense. My 3rd guy is a guy this is going to be an extrapolation one for me, where I know some people are thinking this is happening, some aren't. Maybe I'd love to hear your thoughts on this if you're buying what I'm selling on this one, which is going to be Troy Fautanu of Washington. The guy's playing left tackle for them right now, but I see him kicking inside at the next level. Are you buying what I'm selling?
I think that's probably what's going to happen here. It's I don't think he's going to play left tackle in the NFL. Like, I don't see that. So therefore, left tackle, you fail down to right tackle. And then if you fail at right tackle, you go to left guard. And then if you fail at left guard, you go to right. Like, that's how it works. It's like hitting the branches when you're falling down the tree, and eventually you find the branch that'll hold you. Why not just skip falling down the tree and just go find the branch that actually suits you? I think Ole Fashanu playing guard makes sense.
I like what he brings. He brings up, I think, at the forefront a little bit of pass protection. But hey, you saw this last week with the Husky rusher getting 250 on USC, that he can do some run blocking as well. I think there's a lot of shades of what I see in Barton, and this is the reason I also have him very well put together, is that Barton and Troy, I think, are very much similar in that they're guys that can play all across your line, like you just sort of intimated on. But they're also guys that I think could be really solid left guards in these league. Maybe they don't get to a star level, but they are going to be high floor guys that you can get in and where you can put them and know what you're getting out of them. Along with the versatility that they bring to play. Maybe not flashy prospects, maybe not high upside prospects. But right now, you could make an argument for finding guys that a little bit more of what you're getting, where we've got holes on this team that we just need to really fix up those big holes. And it doesn't have to be star quality. We got star power in other places. We just need more things to fit to, a functional level where it's non-functional here, non-functional there, and then that all kind of keeps the whole offense from being functional when those all three factors or four factors go together. So guys like this that I think what you're getting coming in, what they're going to bring.
Okay.
Right guard. Let's move on over to there.
I would probably say I had Fuaga here, but now I think you've convinced me that he's going to play tackle. So I think my top right guard, I'm tempted to say Zach Zinter is my top guy here. Michigan, really solid overall season. Every game he's played, he's been graded well. Part of that dominant Michigan offensive line that just seems to win every battle they get into. Probably the Michigan offensive lineman who I'm the highest on in terms of being added as a Seahawk. I don't know. You guys, how I feel about right guards. I don't want to spend too much capital to get one.
Mm-hmm.
But if Zinter's there in round 2, let's say we trade up from our third round picks to the second round late, and he's there, I'm not against it because I think he's going to be a really solid right guard in the NFL.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I feel the same way. Zinter is going to be my number one right guard on the list as well. He is another one in a line of Graham Bartons or Troy Fontanus, Bebes that are fairly clean offensive line prospects. For instance, when we were looking at Osiris Torrance last year, I wasn't sure with him if that's a guy that, okay, he's big, but he can't really move, but I don't know what you really know in these guys what you're going to get. And Zach, like you said, has been solidly graded in every game with Michigan this year. He's a complete player, both good in pass protection, and he can definitely clear out rushing lanes. He can move in space. He arrives with bad intentions as a blocker. He's a finisher. Quintessential kind of Harbaugh lineman. And we went there last year with the Oluwatimi pick. So this team definitely has a predilection to lean in and liking these guys a little bit, maybe even players from that program. We took 2 Michigan players last year with Mike Morris in addition to that. But Zinter is another prospect who, though he plays right guard, like Brendan's saying, it's not the highest value. This is a really clean prospect. I don't know if there's a lot of negatives to his game that's going to be able to be presented, especially if you look at him through the lens of being a real pure right guard. He moves better than Avila and Osiris Torrance, who were both second round picks last year. And I think he's every bit, if not better, a player than those two guys were.
I agree.
Who's your number 2?
My number 2 would probably be Christian Mahogany.
Does your house smell like mahogany?
Mm-hmm. I admittedly don't know if he's going to play left or right in the NFL. I think it could go either way, but I suspect it'll be right guard. I got a round 3 grade on him. Boston College runs the ball for like 8,000 yards every single game they play this year, and he's at the forefront of that. Big reason why they do. They run behind him a lot, and he's just solid. I would say I'm a little concerned about his pass protection in the NFL because Boston College doesn't throw the ball like ever this year.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he's a right guard. It's more important to run block. So I'd put a round 3 grade on him.
Yeah, I like that as well. He is a guy I've got. I dipped him a little down from Earless when we talked. He's my 3rd guy now. I put a guy up at number 2, but he's in the 3rd spot for me. He doesn't look like he should move good when you look at his body, but then he starts to get to moving out there, and you're like, oh man, he's actually out there, covering some ground post snap. And what Boston College asked him to do in run blocking there, they've got some creative run blocking schemes. They don't just ask their guys to mano a mano match up and blast the guy off the line. So there's some there is a little bit of echoes, I guess, to our scheme and what we ask our linemen to do or what we want them to do. I think he's going to be able to hit the reach blocks. I think he's got a good NFL-sized body, good length, good strength. There's some things that you go a little bit worried about with him, but overall, I think you feel pretty good that he's going to be a competent player in this league, and he would be a fit to our scheme.
Okay. Who's your number 2?
My number 2 is Tate Ratledge. Tate Ratledge is my number 2. Yeah, he's a guy that's been just get my notes up. Sorry, here. Let me.
Not a problem.
Get him up. Everything's buried. I don't have it under greatly put out. Monster size, a right guard. He can move in space. Another one of those guys that just arrives with absolutely just bad intentions. I mean, he's maybe one of the more nastier linemen you'd find in this whole draft, in my opinion, Brendan. He's looking to take souls, is Tate Ratledge. And I love that in my linemen. It's one of the things that's been great about watching Bradford go out on the field this year is that he gets out there and he gets after it. He's not just looking to block his guys. He's looking to cause some damage, I guess, a little bit, for lack of better. Not bad, not cheating damage, just that he's looking to be what you do on the NFL field, which is dominate your guy physically. He's not super athletic, but this is the right guard position, man. It's about being big and powerful and being able to take those nose tackles and drive them out of the hole. That's just what Tate Ratledge can do.
Yeah. So that's a good one. That's another good one. That's the guy I've had my eye on over the last few weeks as well.
Who did we get through your third? I think we got your third left.
My third, I was pretty torn. It was either Ratledge, like you said, who I think would be better for the Seahawks. So I do lean that way. However, I do think if you're running the right offensive scheme, Donovan Jackson might be a better prospect. I think both those guys are on a pretty equal plane. For the Seahawks, I would say Ratledge would be my number 3 guy. But Donovan Jackson, I think, is graded similarly for me, even though I don't like him as much for the Seahawks because he's more of just a road grader.
Yeah, that's my one worry with him. And I got to give him credit because he started out not necessarily having the greatest start of the year look like, but he's really gotten himself, it seems like, back to rolling there in Ohio State. He's just a big mauler, man. And if you're going to run the old scheme, you might have him. But that's the problem I have with him is I do like him, but where does he fit in this particular scheme that we run? Because he's going to have a hard time getting out in those hit and reach blocks alone. I think would be really difficult for Donovan. I wouldn't want to ask him to do it very often.
I agree.
We got a couple donations here. Just want to stay on top of these so I'm not too far behind here on these, or a donation. Sorry. Snail, thank you for the $5 donation, Snail. This is hypothetical. Panthers get the first pick and do the smart thing and draft Williams. JC gives up a 2025 first or second for Young. How do you feel about it?
Well, the Panthers don't have their first pick because they gave it to the Bears in the Bryce Young trade. For starters.
Yeah.
Bryce Young to me looks completely lost. Like there's actually been some a lot of the analytical guys on X go back and forth about Bryce Young every week about just how he just looks completely out of his element, which even that surprises me. I didn't like Bryce Young at all coming out, but I didn't think he was going to be like overwhelmed the way that he looks so far.
No, the whole thing with him is he's supposed to be able to process really well and be ahead of it with his, mental application for the position. So you wouldn't think that as well, though. Again, like you just said, neither you nor I were particularly high on Young. We got asked the question a million times about whether we want him on the Hawks, and neither you nor I at any point in time were like, yeah, let's do that. The size issues and all that remained what they were. And then, you can't see. That's the other thing. There's times he just can't see. Like there's times Kyler Murray can't see. Like there's times Russell can't see. There's times these smaller quarterbacks just can't see over the pocket. It makes it hard to play the position when you're blind at certain plays for a portion of the field or part of the play. Bless you, Brendan. But let's just say it was the Bears, Brendan. Snail, let me hijack your question and turn it in a way that we can make it functional. Because like Brendan said, the Panthers don't have their first round pick this year. So let's say it is the Bears and the Bears are going to give up Fields and they'll give you Fields for a future second round pick or your 2 third round picks this year.
Fields is awful. Like Fields, I'm sorry, but the forward pass was invented over 100 years ago, and nobody told Justin Fields, I guess, because I'm sorry, he's just bad.
Yeah, no, I probably wouldn't do it either. So Snails, no, I'd roll with how we're rolling. I'd rather try one of these second, third round quarterbacks we were talking about earlier on the show than going for a guy that's failed out like a Fields has. I wouldn't, or Young. I just still don't want Young anyway. I just don't have a huge amount of value put on him as far as where I see him as a player. And it certainly hasn't improved now with him stumbling out of the blocks to start this out. All right, so let's go to our final offensive position here, which is going to be, and thank you, Snail, for that $5 donation. I appreciate you on that. Center position. Let's take a look at the center. Who is your number one graded center on the board?
I think there's a clear number one this year, Cedric Van Pran of the Georgia Bulldogs. Loved this guy last year. He broke my heart when he didn't come out.
Yeah.
I'm not against what happened last year because we got Oluwatimi in the 5th, and I'm very high on Oluwatimi. But Van Pran, I think, is a round 2 guy, moves really well, has good control of pre-snap stuff, as you need your center to be in the NFL these days. Lot of stuff to really like here. Maybe you don't have the raw strength that you see with some centers, but I don't think that's as important for us. So yeah, I would go round 2 with Van Pran.
Yeah, I just think he's a very complete center for what he brings. Like you, I was definitely not loving that he didn't come out last year. It would have been a very interesting pick for the Hawks to take a look at him. I think he would have stood out to them. He brings plus size and plus length to the position, plus mobility to the position. He's very good at blocking on the move. So you get him blocked up and you're trying to go laterally, let's say on an outside zone or pitch play, and you need the lineman to be blocking the guy and then also moving laterally as they block. He does a really good job of keeping his feet and keeping the guy blocked. You can trust him one-on-one as a center to hold up against nose tackles or 3 techs. He's got good feet and pass protection. That they slide really nice and smoothly. He doesn't seem to get overwhelmed. Like you say, pass protection is really where he shines. Run blocking is where there's a little bit more maybe you'd want from him to a degree, though he can hit the elemental parts, the reach blocks and stuff, which I think is more than just driving the guy off the ball with the center in our scheme. It's more that you really would love to see. But complete center, a guy that I do put right now is a late first round grade on because I just think he's going to be such an easily clean prospect for teams to look at and see. I can see what he's going to do at the center. He's in that Linderbaum. Who was the guy last year? Schmitz. To me, he's in that range of things where I'm not saying he's a high first round pick. It would be a later, like 28, 29, 30, 31, 32 ish, or maybe even the top of the second, but I do see him going there.
Yeah, I could see it because there's no other center. Like, honestly, I don't think another center goes until day 3. So if you want a top center, you might have to be like, okay, this is our chance to get Van Pran. We have to do it, even though it's round 1 and we might prefer not to, but we just have to.
Yeah, very well could have to. I mean, that's what's caused, I think, in like Linderbaum's case, you had the same thing playing out. I mean, that's to make your point on that. Even last year with Schmitz, right? Wasn't it kind of the same way with him? I mean, there were some people that liked other centers better than Schmitz, but the consensus by the time we got to the draft was like Schmitz, and then there's a fall off to the kind of the next guys. They're good, but they're like more a round or 2 later on, in difference. But yeah, that could definitely cause him to get taken a little bit higher because of the scarcity of the position in this draft. Who's your number 2 center?
I go Zach Frazier, the Mountaineer guy. I got him in round 4. More of a road grader than Van Pran. More of a run blocker, which is what you would expect from a WVU center. But maybe he was a little kid watching Geno Smith play football for WVU. I don't know.
Probably.
So maybe he's always wanted to play with Geno Smith. But yeah, nothing too exciting here. I have a round 4 grade on him. I like him, but I don't know if he necessarily fits. And yeah, more of a run blocker to me.
Yeah, he's the thing I have a hard time with him on is I have a 4th round grade on him. I think he will be able to be a center in this sport, but I think that he's got really heavy feet, and he's going to be at his best staying in a phone booth rather than having to get out and block in space. Not very much snappy about his movement. Something you also look at with our linemen is just everything's kind of a little bit labored and coming up and getting, it's like, I feel like you should have that beep, beep, beep thing as he's coming up out of his stance sometimes. But he's got a real wide body. He's got strong hands. When he lands on contact, he can really jolt guys. Do like him overall as a prospect. Just I think he's not necessarily maybe a scheme fit to what we do. Though agree with you where there's not just necessarily a lot of really good linemen as it stands here in this draft. My number 2 is going to be Jackson Powers Johnson, the hyphenation, the man with three last names. Jackson Powers to me is a guy that can maul and can move. Another guy like Van Pran that can block really well on the move, something I look for. I think he is smooth as absolute silk when it comes to his combination blocking. Centers have this timing thing, and Ole Fashanu did this really well last year as well, where you come off, you have to snap the ball, lay some initial contact, slide off of it very, very quickly, and get to your second level block and lay the second level block with force. You can't cheese out on the first block, because if you don't help your guy in the first block, that initial hole's not created. And you can't cheese out on the second part of the block to actually get the second level block laid, because if the linebacker dips you and is able to, shed the block away, it's going to be a tackle. And it's hard. You see what you see in linemen doing these kind of blocks, centers as well, is they'll do one assignment, but they won't do the other. And with Jackson Powers, the thing I really loved about him is that bam, 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 bam. And it would just be very smooth from one to the next when you're asking him to go from one task to the next, which is what you ask centers to do in a stunt game. Pick this guy up. This guy's sliding to you. Your reactions are so very important. Not the most powerful, but absolutely, in my opinion, really, really athletic for the position and tenacious. So what he makes up for in power, he brings with tenaciousness. And I do like him as a second round guy. The only second round grade I got in the center right now, and then it goes to fourth round for me. I'm with you on the talent of the center position definitely drops off in this one, right. But I just liked him as a fit.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look into Powers Johnson a little bit more. That's pretty intriguing. He hasn't really been on my radar. Obviously, I know who he is because I watch Oregon a lot, but okay, I'm going to have to look at him in a different, through a different lens, as they say.
Well, I know how it is with you Huskies watching Oregon players. It's your eyes are bleeding. You know what I mean? You keep trying to look away from the screen like a reflective action, almost like you're throwing up, but you're looking away.
When we played them last month, those were some ugly jerseys. They looked
they had duck poo on them. Yeah. What are you doing?
Those were some bad jerseys. Like you got the whole wide world of jerseys to pick from if you're playing for Oregon, and that's what you pick for the rivalry game.
It's literally was duck poo, dude. Like that's the look they're going. Like they're we're going to be the whole duck, end part will be the poo too part. Like that. Yeah, it was an awful looking jersey. I don't know why who told them that was good, but that was a failure, and that's why they lost. Really, if you think about it, that was the reason.
Very true.
Who's your third guy?
I had a heck of a time finding the third guy. Best I could do was Bryce Foster of Texas A&M. That's really it. And I don't have much to say about him. I think he's worthy of like a 7th round pick. I need to find more centers. I've had a heck of a time finding one. I think some of these guards are going to convert to center, but I don't know which ones. I need to try to figure that out.
It's probably true, considering especially how weak this class is. He's a big guy. Takes up a tremendous amount of space. He is wide as hell. Powerful as hell, really good punch. Foster, I do him as a 5th round guy just because he loses his feet every other snap. He's stumbling and bumbling and all over. I've got Matt Lee, 4th round guy. I have as my 3rd, just a little bit ahead of Zach Frazier, but very close to the same spot. Good pop off the snap. Usually excellent hand placement, really gets them inside and drives it up. You don't see him, panicking and everything's to the outside. He's really proficient in his hand use, which is going to be nice. He's very bouncy in pass protection. So I like I think his movement's going to be pretty good. And he does a good job of sticking with the twitchier linemen out there, but he does get overwhelmed by sometimes the more powerful guys. And he's got a creative little pancake move he does, where he doesn't pancake guys, where he puts them up and flat backs them. He has a guy he'll give up ground and get smacked, and then he twists the guy and then lays on him. And it's not a hold, Brendan. You know what I mean? Like he just does that thing where he can recover and then readjust and then just sort of throws his body weight on the guy, and it works. It's like his own little technique. But another guy in the 4th round.
Yeah.
All right. Let's turn this over here to the defense. And again, on the defense, we're going to have some positions we spend a little bit more time on, like let's say defensive tackle versus let's say ones we're not, which is going to be cornerback and safety, because we're not really anticipating that we're going to cover a lot on that. So let's start out with the most maybe important position, I think, by needs coming to this draft, absent maybe middle linebacker, and that would be defensive tackle. Brendan.
Right.
Who's your number 1 guy on your board for DT?
Well, I've kind of divided things up into 2 groups. I have the defensive linemen, and then I have the nose tackles.
Okay.
because I think there's a big difference between these 350-pound barrels full of dirt, and then you have these 300-pound defensive linemen that are playing 4-eye and 3-tech and stuff like that. So do you want to chop it up like that, or do you want to just kind of group it all together?
Let's group it together because I think we can delineate between as we're talking about them, and I think we're going to talk about all these guys anyway.
Okay.
We'll end
Well,
up
I
covering.
got one round one guy. He's a very good one, though. He's really come on strong lately. It's Jerzan Newton of Auburn. No, wait. I'm sorry. I don't know why I said Auburn. Illinois.
Illinois.
So he is really about the only thing they've got going on that Illinois defense right now. They have gone from the best defense in college football last year with Witherspoon and Adam, and who were the safeties they had? Sidney Brown and
Martin, Q Martin, Devin
yeah, Martin.
Witherspoon.
Yeah, it was a dominant defense to a defense that is actually kind of bad. Jerzan Newton's like Atlas holding the whole globe up on his shoulders. But he has really been dominant lately. And I think he's clearly DL1. And I think he is clearly the one defensive lineman who at this point is guaranteed to go in round one.
Yeah, I agree with you. Some shades of an old Seahawks Sam Adams to his game to me. Kind of a guy's got a big old belly coming up out of his jersey, but yet he's got some odd first step quickness and quickness in general for a man his size. He's a guy I've struggled with at times. I liked him a lot at first and didn't like him as much at the start of this year. I find myself, this is why we got to have this as a process, Brendan, is you got to go through all the tape a bit. I find myself warming more and more up to him as the year goes along and the more tape I start to watch this season. He could give you, I think, both some 3-tech and 1-tech ability. I think he's got ability to go between the two. A little bit all like a Leonard Williams. I think he's probably to me a guy that'll get overdrafted because of how light the defensive tackle position is going to be in the first round, and that he's the one clear guy out there that's worthy of it. And that's going to probably have him being picked higher than he should, which is more like being a guy that should probably be a top 15 guy to me than being a guy that's going to be probably a top 10 to maybe top 7, 8 guy.
Yeah, I don't view him like that. I don't, and honestly, in this draft, I don't see him going in the top 10. I could see top 15.
Yeah. Even that, though, I feel like this is just still a little overdraft. Like I like Kalijah Cansey more coming out last year's draft than him.
I think I could get behind that. I loved Cansey.
Yeah, I just did. And Cansey went 19, of course, in the first round, just ahead of us, which he's looking pretty good for Tampa Bay too.
Oh, really? I thought he got hurt. Didn't he like tear his Achilles in the...
No, I just saw a little X highlight on somebody was showing some of the cut-ups of him playing, and so they're like, they got one down there in Tampa Bay or something is what they're saying. Okay, let's go to the next guy you've got on your list. Who's your number 2? Who's your number 2?
I'm gonna go with T'Vondre Sweat here.
And I'm by the way, I'm with you on that. I don't know if I made that clear. I'm with you on the Newton one, by the way.
Yeah. This one's tough. There are a lot of guys I have a round 3 grade on, but to me, Sweat is pushing into round 1 very quickly. He's just so good. He's so fun. He's really providing a lot as a pass rusher. Texas has a bunch of games this year where they allow like 1.2 yards per carry, and you just can't run on them. And he's a big reason why. He's one of those nose tackles that also gives you a lot of push into the pocket. There's just a lot to like from T'Vondre Sweat. He's he might get to Mason, what was the name of the nose tackle last year? Mozzie Smith territory. And honestly, I might like him more than Mozzie Smith because this guy can rush the passer.
Yeah, and he's also got a little more of a naturally big body, whereas Mozzie Smith was kind of like a weird 1-tech. He was good size, but it somewhat didn't always make sense, right? Because he was also a guy that kind of had like shades of a 3-tech body who just was really good in 1-tech stuff. This guy's got a 1-tech body. He looks like it. It's real wide, and he takes up a lot of space. It's going to be hard to get your second level blockers around him. He's going to require double teams at the next level. He's been the guy that maybe has raised up in my eyes as any prospect from where I had him looked at last year, Brendan. Got quite a few of these guys we looked at last year and then looked at them where they're at this year. I think his stock is really raised in my mind because I had him more last year watching his tape of kind of a 4th round guy, heavily rotated out, didn't give you anything as a pass rusher, and really was just a run defender. He's come forward as a pass rusher this year, 85, to put this in perspective, 85 pass rush grade. So he is absolutely on top of being the second rated he's the highest rated lineman in PFF in college football. But he's really showing you a complete player. I struggle at this point to quite get him into first round territory, but I think you make a good argument for it. I think there is a great argument to be made that's where he's going to eventually be landing here, especially considering a guy like Maze Smith last year and where he went. The one thing I'd wonder about that is that, do the Cowboys and do the NFL look at that pick with Maze last year going, yeah, that was you guys being smart in where you picked him, or you went a little high, should have been more of a second round guy you took up in the first round because you kind of fell in love with
He's
him.
not been good yet. I'll say that. He
No.
barely plays.
Yeah. That's where I wonder with that a little bit. But Tavondre's been really good, and he's as big, he is big and wide, and just he's a load. Who's and by the way, I agree with you on that too. I have a second round grade, but he's my number 2 D tackle. So we're in alignment so far. Who's number 3 for you?
This one's tough, but I am going to go with Chris Jenkins of Michigan.
Ooh,
it's really close with me between him and Leonard Taylor, but Jenkins has been better this year.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Leonard Taylor has upside that just hasn't been seen yet this year. Like, I don't know. There's just something weird going on with this season, but Chris Jenkins just always just kind of brings it. Huge part of that Michigan defense being so dominant. Really good against the run, provides some good stuff against the pass. Doesn't ever really have a game where he just blows up and goes crazy. He's just kind of consistently good every game, well-rounded. Not much I can take away from Chris Jenkins.
Agreed. I think you put it in a great way. I can't really add a whole lot extra than what you put it as. Absolute great run defender. He's going to help whatever defensive line rotation he fits into. Is he a star? Is he this? Is he that? I don't know. I know that if I bring him and I add him to my defensive line, he's going to help that defensive line out. He's going to be a player up there. He's going to make my defense better. And I don't have Jenkins quite. I have one player behind where you're at, so we're pretty much close on this one. I do have him as a second round grade. I think the pass rush is going to come along with him in time. I know that's not been as big a vibrant part of his game so far, but it's not been a bad part of his game. And that is a part that I think can take a little bit of a step forward with the tools that he has to work with. But I like Chris Jenkins quite a bit, and that's a great play on that. My number 2 guy is going to be Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. Another guy
number 3, right?
My number 3, sorry, number 3. A one tech guy, really good grades this year in how he's played it for Ohio State. I think he has ascended past Michael Hall Jr., the other defensive tackle that's highly rated there with Ohio State. I think he's just a better all-around player. A guy that does cut his teeth, much like with Chris Jenkins in run defense, but then does give you a little bit of pass rush, but can give you at times almost dominance in his run defense as a defensive tackle. Really, I think a pretty safe player when you go out there and look to get this guy in what you're getting from him. He's listed 320. I think he's 340. He'll be a stout 0 tech, 1 tech, and I don't have any issues at that point grabbing him. It's probably a little early to take him in the second round, maybe, but I just do feel like he's just got a solid all-around grade. And because I'm so comfortable in knowing what I'm getting from him, it allows me to feel a little bit okay with putting him in that spot.
Yeah, I like Tyleik a lot as well. He's to me like T'Vondre Sweat, but not quite as much pass rush. But he's been the central part of a really good run defense that Ohio State's had this year. Like you said, Michael Hall Jr. I think has been unimpressive this year. Honestly, I'm not in love with Tommy Eichenberg's play, so
No.
I look at Tyleik Williams and I say he is the main reason why they're so stout up front. Like, I think he is the linchpin of all that. So I really like Tyleik as well. I would put him in round 2.
Awesome. So we're agreeing there. Number 4, who would be your guy?
Tyleik.
And so I had, we just flipped ours there. Number 5.
My number 5, I would say, is Leonard Taylor. He's a really tough one. He hasn't played a ton this year, but when he does, he's a dominant pass rusher. His pass rush grade is off the charts for Miami. But you're definitely betting on his potential more than you are sitting pretty with his production, I would say.
100% right, man. He's twitchy.
I go round 2.
Yeah, he's super twitchy, isn't he? And just I mean, he's kind of can at times look like he could be a TFL machine back there. he doesn't quite get to that point like you talked about in his consistency, but he always feels like he's winning on the first step of his get off and putting that lineman in a bind of having to be in kind of a recovery mode, which makes you want to see more meat on the bone from his production this past year than what you've gotten out of him. Like you said, it's just been a bit of a weird year there for him down there in Miami. I still do put a second round grade on him, Brendan. He's just at the back of my stack. I've got, for me in this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 7 second round grades on these defensive tackles. He's the final guy for me in that second round that I have that second round grade on. I'm trusting that you're going to be able to tap into that upside, but it hasn't quite been there as consistently as you'd like. That's why he's dipped down for me, but I still like him a lot as a player.
Yeah.
My guy is going to be Deontay Corleone out of Cincinnati.
I like him.
I like him a lot, man. You remember those players, Brendan, that like I can explain about how big he is, how he shouldn't move like he does for his size. I can break down the parameters of this guy, but aren't there just sometimes those players that you look at on tape and you go, there's just something about the way this guy's moving and going about his business that looks a little bit different. And do you get that kind of thing about certain guys too as well? Or am I a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. Like sometimes they look like they got to belong to a different species because of how they move compared to how big they are. That's like I do this more in the NBA, but somebody like Shaq, he should not be able to move the way that he moved when he was younger for a guy who's 350 pounds, 7'1", but he did.
Absolutely. And this guy's that way. He is as strong as an ox. He is a complete player that is in both the run as a great run stopper, provides pass rush. He's going to require double teams. He's got a little bit of juice to be able to move in addition to that. I love the look of him on just watching the raw tape of him. Then you go and you watch it and match it up to what you see from him statistically with PFF. And he's holding up there as one of the better rated defensive tackle graded guys out there across the sport as well. Guy that doesn't get as much tape out there or discussion out there. Some of even a couple other guys we're going to talk about in this list here that still we got to get into on this, but love his game, Brendan. And he would be one of those guys that would have me just about as excited as any guy that we could take on draft day, because he's starting to become one of those personal affinity guys, one of Brandon's guys,
Yeah, I like him too. We've talked about him before. He's been pretty impressive for Cincinnati. Not a great year for the Bearcats, though, admittedly. Like there have been some years where there have been like 18 draftable players on that roster. This is not one of those years.
Well, that's where I think, like you mentioned Illinois, don't you think it's a bit like you go through a couple of years of that where you lose that much talent back-to-back years, and it's like restocking it is easier said than done. And you might have had some good draft classes and all that, but like there's kind of that college football's like that where usually you're turning it. There's a year or two in there, you're turning things over for a second. Even the good programs kind of finding your footing as you've lost a talent it just happens. Sometimes you'll lose 4, 5, 6. It's kind of happened to the Huskies a little bit this year. They've done a good job of stocking behind it, but it makes it hard sometimes, talent drain. Yeah. Who's our next guy on the list for you on the defensive tackle position?
I go Tyler Davis of Clemson, one of the few guys on that Clemson defense that hasn't disappointed me this year.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not been great, but Tyler Davis, I think, kind of stands out. I still have a round 2 grade on him. I just like what he's doing just in general on the interior there, providing a good amount of pass rush as a interior defensive lineman, holding stout, and allowing those linebackers to play really well behind him. Although we'll talk about those guys in a second. They're not exactly doing great themselves, but
no.
I think Tyler Davis is probably the guy from Clemson that I currently covet the most.
Yeah, I like him here too. I've got him and Brandon Dorless are neck and neck right here. So I basically have him in about the same place from where I stand. He's got a great rip move, the best rip move, the best rip move in probably on the defensive tackle position in this draft. I love his flexibility. I think he's a guy that can play 1 or 3 tech. They moved him all over the place on that line. I know he's only 300 pounds, but he does a good job at 6'2" of using leverage to really gain an advantage time and time again. Then he can go that rip move. So he gets the leverage and then he goes to the rip move often. And it's he's able to really get freed with that. Like you say, I think he's one of the few defensive players on this Clemson defense that, let's just face it, hasn't been underperforming the last couple of years, right? Because this has been kind of a commonality thing we've seen in recent times of like, what's going on over there? You guys got all this talent that's not performing at times. If his initial move is stymied, he doesn't have a big counter that he can go to, but he has got a lot of talent. He's got some refinement to him. I love his flexibility. I see him as a second round guy. Another one of those guys highly graded by PFF this year. He's done his job. do like his game quite a bit. He brings a lot to the table, man, for the player that he is. I think you can move him all around the line.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and count down Tyler there. Who's your next guy there below that?
I'm going to go with, this is actually a guy I just bumped up because I thought he played really well last week, Dorless of Oregon. He had like 6 pressures in that game. Who were they playing? Cal. Not a great team or anything, but he had a bunch of pressures in the Washington game. Like, he's just every game, it seems like he's harassing the opposing quarterback. So he's growing on me, and it took a while. I had him below a couple guys until this most recent week, but he's coming on strong.
Yeah, he didn't have a great 2022 tape either, by the way. His 22 tape made you feel like you had a bit of a tweener on your hands. He has come forward this year, and I think they were trying to use him a little bit too much last year on the outside. Kick him inside, let him operate as a 3 tech. That's what he is. And he can work well with that role. He can be a penetrator and a disruptor back in your backfield. So I like what Brandon brings. He's got good size, 6'3". He's not the heaviest of guys, so he's got to beat you with quickness to the spot. But he is a really talented player with his use of hands and his ability to get off blocks using those hands and being kind of violent with them a little bit at times. I do like him in the second round as well. I've got all these guys we're talking about in that second round territory as it stands. This will be the last guy for me, since we already got to Leonard Taylor and Tyler Davis for me. But that's my grouping of the guys we talked about so far. They're all in my second round.
Right.
Who's your next? And do you have Dorless as a second round guy?
Right now, yes, I do.
All right. Where's your next one you go to?
I think my next guy would be these next 3 guys for me actually are kind of guys that have disappeared this year, but they're still kind of coasting off of their draft stock from before the season started a little bit. So I got Michael Hall Jr. of Ohio State. He's really been, I barely noticed him this year. I just haven't really noticed much. I don't think he's playing terrible. He's just not doing that much. I'm definitely down on him. I definitely have him in like that round 3, starting to get to like round 4 area. But I still put him around here.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a good makeup, and he's going to have some decent production through his career coming out. But I do put him into more of a 3rd round range, and I do think that's where you land him at, probably late 3rd round at this point. I do have a guy, Dwayne Carter, just a little ahead of him. He reminds me a bit of Jaron Reed. Not quite as much power of Jaron, but the ability to kind of move around and create pressures and be a guy that could 1-3 tech and create pressures from either position. I like what he brings to it. Very smart and aware player. But Carter, I've got just a little bit ahead, but both in my 2 3rd round grades.
Yeah.
Who's your other guy? Your last guy?
My last guy is going to be this. This is another guy who I just haven't noticed that much this year. Mekhi Wingo, the LSU guy. Him and Mason Smith. Just not a lot going on with either guy this year.
And Aurora. Can we add him to the list too?
He's my honorable mention here.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would probably put like guys like Nazir Stackhouse and your guy Corleone over guys like Mason Smith and Rook Orahoro now.
Yeah. Yeah. Wingo's had a disappointing year, hasn't he?
Yeah, I don't think I've noticed him once this year. He's just there.
Yeah, it's been weird. Him, Mason Smith's another guy we thought kicked inside, and we're gonna get to see. He was got a lot of people thought would be a top 10 pick, and he's got to be dipping down into probably like 4th round territory now at this point, if not deeper.
Right.
Which is just strange because a lot of people were so hyped up on him. Well, that's our defensive tackle group, Brennan. It's a nice group for where we could potentially be picking. I think we're going to get a good potential guy here that you can go through. There's not a lot of secondhand elements on this, isn't it?
It's a definite position of strength in this draft. Quarterback, defensive line, I would say would be your 2 best positions.
So Hawks can definitely look to maybe address in there if they want to find some guys. We're going to go to another one of the positions here that's going to be a bit of a quick one, and that's going to be defensive edge. So this is going to be a little bit of a lightning round to a degree because the fact that Hawks have taken, much like the running back position, 2 second-round picks on the edges in back-to-back classes. You have Darrell Taylor still under club control for another year after this year, and you have Uchenna Nwosu still under contract. So it's not likely that the team is going to go out there and draft an edge. Let's go through the top 3 guys on our list right now as they emerge, just to let the audience know so they can keep an eye on guys. Who's your number 1 edge as it stands right now?
I change every week. This one's tough. I got 3 guys kind of clustered together here.
Yeah.
Right now, this week, I go Dallas Turner is my top edge.
Okay.
I mean, great player. I think he might go top 10. And if he does, I think that's fair. Another one of the guys really holding up that Alabama team that is having some real problems this year offensively. Him and Malachi Moore, their safety. I really like both those guys.
Yeah.
But I haven't paid super close attention to the edge guys, so I go with Dallas Turner.
Yeah, Turner's definitely got kind of a similar body being Alabama of Will Anderson. They both very thinly cut edges. They're not an ounce of fat on either of those guys, and fairly good player as far as really more of a pass rusher to me than a run defender. I got Latu. Latu just ahead of him. I don't have either as being top 10 guys. It wouldn't surprise me, like you say, if somebody ends up taking him there because they see the being an upside selection. But as top 20 guys, top 25 guys, I see them more in that realm. What I like about Latu is that he's just been so consistent in creating pressures. It's like every game, it's like 7, 8, 9 pressures a game off the edge. He's also the highest graded edge in all of college football to go into addition of that. I think that is noteworthy, and this is 2 straight years of him putting this kind of production up. I don't know if he's going to go. He's a guy that I think there's going to be some varied opinion out there about where he should go, but I just think you can't deny that production from him. It's too good.
Yeah. I got Latu as my number 2 right now for everything you just said. He's his pressure rate is off the charts. Like it's high, much higher than any other edge this year, I think. I don't know if it still is, but I think so.
Yeah. I haven't seen it drop to any point. Every time I check in on him, it's like, so he has an understanding for how to get to the quarterback, and his pass rush moves and his ability to use his hands. And he's got every move in the book, Brennan. He takes the whole, he's got all the tools in there every time he goes out on the field, and he can go to which tool do I need? What? The wrench, the 6'5" wrench with the 3-inch. Okay. And I got to put the socket, which socket? 2/3 of an inch. Okay. And then he's free.
He's a problem. He's going to be a problem.
Let's talk about another guy that I think is going to be a problem. I don't know if this is your third guy. I'm going to take a guess and hope it is. You got to be a Husky homer somewhere here, Brendan. You can't be so unbiased everywhere. We got to get a little bit of bias in here. A guy that's been a riser this year for me that I take, when much like Odunze went from like a second round grade to more of a first round. This is another guy that's gone from a second round to a first for me as well, and that'd be Braylon Trice. Is that your third, or do you got Verse up ahead of him?
I got Verse ahead of him, although I'll tell you, Verse has been pretty quiet this year. So it's very close.
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought Trice was quiet until pretty recently too. I thought the Huskies' strength would be pass rush this year, and for most of the year, it's been So I will say I'm not crazy about the way either guy is playing. As of right now, I go Jared Verse, but it's close. It can change by the end of this year. Let's put it that way.
I think that's fair. That's fair. I do go with Trice. I like much with Latu his understanding as a pass rusher of, rather than like what you get with Verse, which is first step quickness, let me get to my bend. First step quickness, let me get to my bend. And you see him doing that snap after snap after snap, where if he can't beat you to the edge, he's got not a lot else he can do or attack you with. Good effort, but there's nothing there technically he's bringing really to the table. Whereas with Bryce, like Latu, these are guys who understand how to rush the passer. They understand how to chain pass rush moves together, or how to call upon a counter if they're initially stymied. There's not a lot of that with Verse. He gets stymied and he's stopped. But I do like Verse. I do have all 4 of these guys with first round grades, albeit with Trice and Verse, I would put him as more late first round grades at this point. It's funny with Verse too. I think he might have actually gone higher last year if he had come out of the draft versus where he's going to go this year, I think, because his stock was really high last season.
You might be right.
Well, let's push it then here forward. Do you have any other first round edges, or is that your?
Maybe the Penn State guy, Robinson. What's his name? Demion Robinson, but I don't have him in the top like that. No.
Okay. Well, let's keep it moving because again, I don't think these guys will be on our radar very much anyway. Let's go to a position that let's save middle linebacker because that's one we're going to go into deep. Let's go to a couple of these other positions that might be a bit quicker with. Let's go to cornerback. Another one. Let's part of a lightning round. Hawks are stock locked and barrel at cornerback. We're going to have Woolen and Witherspoon and Trey Brown back and Kobe Bryant back. So if we're going to get guys, probably not going to be taking a guy high. Who is your number 1 corner, and where do you got him going in the draft?
I got Kool-Aid as a top 10 guy right now. I think Kool-Aid goes in the top 10. It seems like teams taking cornerbacks in the top 10 has become a pretty common thing recently. You had two a couple years ago, and then you had, of course, Witherspoon this most recent year. I think Kool-Aid is going to be this year's version of it.
Yeah. And another one, the Alabama corners have had some pretty good track record in recent years coming to the NFL. Surtain, for instance, Trayvon Diggs. So there's also a bit of that. Hey, maybe they've got a little bit of knowing how to train these guys up to get them NFL ready. And he is a guy that does it all. Good tackler, good in coverage. You can ask him to do man and zone. I think he's fluent in being able to handle both. Really twitchy guy, stop and start, everything you want from the position. And I agree with you. I believe that he's going to end up being a top 10 pick pretty cleanly right now. I think the number one corner in this draft. And if you're going to be named Kool-Aid, you're going to be a football player named Kool-Aid. You better be a good one. He can't be a 5th round pick named Kool-Aid.
Yeah, can we get him on the Jets somehow so they can have sauce and Kool-Aid?
That'd be fun. That'd be hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
The nicknames, man. The nicknames. Number 2 corner for you.
I guess it's going to be Wiggins of Clemson. Another part of that Clemson defense that is, I think, more or less living up to expectations. One of the few things where I'm not super down on the guy, but I go Wiggins of Clemson.
6'2" guy, really good off press, really long arms, always in the right place in coverage off the film I watched with him, Brendan. Heady player. Again, the size you like for the cornerback position, you don't always get out there. He can also, I think, change direction pretty good, despite the fact he is a bit of a bigger corner. I've got him more as a 2nd round grade. Where do you have him fitting in at?
I have him at like the back of round 1 or the top of round 2, somewhere around there right now.
Yeah, to your point, we tend to see at least 2 or 3 cornerbacks taken in the 1st round. So he may end up elevating. Who's your number 3?
Number 3 is tough. I think I'm just going to go to that old reliable well of Ohio State cornerbacks, and I'm going to say Denzel Burke for the time being. Again, I'm not looking super hard at cornerbacks this year. I'll just acknowledge that. But let's go Denzel Burke.
Okay. Denzel Burke, what do you like on him?
Round 2 guy, a big, physical. Not in the Tariq Woolen way, but somewhere around there. I look at that and I see a guy who kind of has that swagger, someone who has the a little bit of hitting ability. I would go with that.
It's a great selection. And like you say, you can't go wrong with Ohio State cornerbacks. I liked his tape. He's definitely really good in coverage. Good length to him on top of that. A little bit of my worry with him is just run defense. Didn't always look like he was interested on the tape and getting up there and sticking his nose in there. There were sometimes I felt like some business decisions being made out on the football field. I had, where do you have him as a 1st, 2nd round guy, just generally?
I have him 2nd round.
All right. And I've got Nate Wiggins as the top of the 2nd round. My number 2 corner on my list, by the way, was Kamal Haddon out of Tennessee. I really loved his athleticism. I loved his speed and quickness. I think he can run with anybody. I think he had a little bit of some dog in him in some of the tape I watched with some of the mentality he brought on the field. I felt like I've got him as a late 1st round grade. Kool-Aid's my top 10 guy, but I do have a late 1st round on Kamal. I do really like a lot of what he's bringing to play. And me and Brendan both have a little bit of a dip with a guy you guys might be wondering, what about King? What about King? We both have kind of dipped him down just a little bit.
Yeah, I looked into that a little bit because, again, I'm not paying close attention to corners this year at all. He was somebody who was supposed to be up there with Kool-Aid, and it's not happening this year. Let's put it that way.
Not happening. All right, let's go to 2 other positions before we get to the real meat of the ones we want to kind of talk about on this one, which would be middle linebacker. But let's go to free safety, a position where I don't think we're likely to take somebody, but at the same point in time, we could certainly get out from under Quandre Diggs' contract this offseason. Then it's, anything's possible at that point, right? Definitely you could start to look to target that. Are we doing, we're going free and strong? Or are we just going to go safety on this one?
Let's go ahead and do free and strong. I think we can pull that off.
All right. Give me your number 1 free safety.
Had a pretty good game this last week, so let's go with Cameron Kinchins of the Miami Hurricanes. I think he is probably a 1st round guy. I had him near the back end of the 1st round in my most recent big board. I do think that he is a great ball hawk back there. I think that I think that he's going to be a guy who gets a lot of interceptions in the NFL, and I'm continually impressed with his ability to take away the deep zones when he takes the field.
Yeah, his coverage area might be second to none in this draft. You talk about an Earl Thomas-like ability to cover the center field and to, be a guy that basically in single high situations can operate like a cover two. Look, he's almost like 2-1 in what he brings to the field in his area, and he's got insane ball skills where he's going to be able to go, take it away, high point the ball, and be able to track it deep and be in the right position to make the catch. This kid's a first round safety to me all day. He may be a guy that the more tape I watch Brendan, the more I rise him up. Whereas, free safety, you don't tend to want to push that up very high because of the value of the position and building that in. But he is just so good back there at what he does. It's going to be hard not to maybe elevate him in that way. And he's been coming, like you say, really on strong this year. Already with a lot of heat on him coming into the year. And I just love his game, man. He's a lot of fun to watch on the tape.
Yeah.
Number 2 for you.
Free safety. I gotta go with the USC guy, Kalen Bullock. I actually have him close to a first round grade. Not quite yet, but he's doing everything he can on that USC defense that is really bad. And his playmaking ability is the main reason why they're still nominally alive for even making a bowl game this year, because their defense has been that bad. But another guy who takes away a pretty big zone deep down the field. And yeah, second round pick. I mean, we don't have a second round pick, but if we did, I'd say that's about the right value for him.
I put him as a second round grade as well. I've got it. I like that he's got the great size to him that you don't necessarily get with Kitchens, 6'3", and very long. I'm almost guarantee you, Brendan, he's going to have probably 33.5-inch long arms. Doesn't he look like he's got those go-go gadgets out there? Does Bullock? And the speed's there with him legitimately and how he can cover space. He also has the ball. He has some very similar ball skills to Kitchens, not quite as good, but also some really good ball skills back there. The place that I ding him and why he's not maybe a first round talent or late first round talent is that the run defense and his willingness and want to play the run are not great. He's not the best of run defenders on that category thing. So place for him to improve, but he is still a really good defender. Second round grades, right, man? I like it. Give me your number 3.
This one's tough. There are a couple of guys. I do like Andrew Makuba's potential, but he hasn't really been all that great this year. Cole Bishop has been really good for a great Utah defense. But I'm going to go with Malaki Moore of Alabama. He's been one of the things really propping up that lackluster Alabama team this year. Really like his playmaking, really like the stuff that he does making plays in the backfield on top of his ball hawking skills. Well-rounded all-around safety. Would be a great fit for a Fangio scheme, I think.
Great point. Yeah, you can play the split safety looks and be able to do and accommodate all the deals. As much as you and I like Bullock and Kitchens, I think you would agree with me in saying that this is a kid that has more, maybe the most complete game of these 3 guys. Is that a way? I mean, he's going to go much deeper in the draft, but that he's got a little bit of that. Everything's well-rounded. There is no real glaring, not that there's a glaring part of any of these guys' games, but like I said, Bullock, run defense. I might have a few of those same questions with Kitchens, just a little bit. I don't have any real questions with Malachi Moore and what he's bringing.
Yeah, I could get behind that.
I like him a lot too. These are my 1, 2, 3 as well. Kitchens, Bullock, Moore are my 1, 2, 3 on this one. I haven't done the deep dive like you were talking about on this because it's just not a position I think we're going to end up addressing when it all is said and done. I think that Diggs probably ends up remaining here absent. He just doesn't provide anything this year to them, and then they'll maybe make a move here. But if it was more that they landed on, I wouldn't hate it. He'd be a complete player, and I think he can start from day one on the football field. Your number 1 strong safety.
My number 1 strong safety, it's gotta be, it's Mr. Nubbin in Minnesota.
Nubbin.
Love him.
He's got them nubbins.
Yeah.
Love him. God, is he a fun player to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely exciting, Brendan.
Yeah. Another great Fangio safety, probably.
Could be definitely a Fangio safety. Can do it all. No doubt about that. Another guy like Kitchens, where Kitchens I have in the first round range. Do you have him right now second like I do, or do you have him elevated?
I have him actually at the back end of the first right now.
Okay. And I might very well end up rising to that part of it because you watch the tape of it and you just fall in love with the way the guy plays football. He's everywhere, all around the ball. He's great in coverage. He seems to be assignment correct. You don't see him out of position. You don't see him flailing. He's under control as a player. He can hit. He can lay the wood. He can take away the ball. And he's doing this from the strong safety position mainly. But like you said, he's got some fluidity in how you can utilize him. But he's been just for now 91 coverage grade this year for the Minnesota, and also the highest rated safety in all of football, according to PFF and their analytics. So you're getting a really good player and a guy that I have second round, but very well might end up being pushed up in that first round range when I get to do a bit more of a deep dive on him. Really like his play, Brendan. He's a fun player.
Very much.
Your number 2 guy.
I'm going to go with Cooper DeJean, and this one's a tough one, because he's not even playing safety this year, but I do think he will end up playing safety. He's the Iowa guy. It's a lot of projection, but I like his talent. He's really fast, and I think that when he transitions over to safety in the NFL, he's going to be really good. But I don't have anything concrete to prove it. At this point, probably a round 2 guy.
Yeah, a guy I do like as well, a fun player. I mean, no doubt about that. I mean, you can even on kick returns, he can even do that stuff. Punt returns, he can go and handle all that. The issue, like you just mentioned, was that you just don't know where you're going to put him at because he's being moved everywhere. They're kind of doing him a disservice and moving him all over the places that it gets harder to project which position at the NFL he's going to exactly fit into. You think he's going to do good once you put him here. You believe it's going to happen, but you're not really sure it is. And I don't, with as much as he plays, for instance, slot, nickel, corner, in this defense, I don't think he's going to be able to do nickel corner stuff at the pro level. I don't think he's going to be twitchy and quick enough down there to handle that. So I'm a little worried with that. 5 picks last year. He's got ball skills for days. Can't undersell that part of it. I do have him as my 3rd strong safety. So even though I don't have him as number 2 here, I do have him as my number 3. I do have him as a 3rd round value because of the fact that you do have to do so much of that projection versus knowing what you're getting. And that's not his fault necessarily. He's just doing what Iowa's asking him to do. But boy, he's just a man without position a little bit is what I worry about here with him at the pro level.
Possible. We see those guys pretty frequently.
Absolutely, we do. Who will be your final guy on this? And I had a 3rd round pick, by the way, in Cooper. You had him as a 2?
Yeah, I have 2nd round pick rate on him.
Yeah. And then who's our number 3rd?
I'm going to go with Javon Bullard of Georgia. When in doubt, go draft a defender from Georgia.
Go Georgia. What do you like about Jonathan Bullard?
I think he's another one of these versatile safeties. Like, he's also doing some, deep zone drops. Like, he had the game clinching interception against Missouri just a few days ago, actually. But he's also really good in the box. And it's just like Georgia keeps churning out these safeties on like an assembly line. Like, after Bullard, it's going to be Tyke Smith probably next year. And then after that, it's going to be somebody else. These guys are good. So I'm going to go with Javon Bullard. I have him in like the 3rd round right now.
Really, really great coverage, strong safety. That's his unusual thing he really brings for me, is that he really gives you a guy that you can bring him up and match him one-on-one with backs and tight ends, and he's going to run step for step with those guys and stay sticky in coverage. Where sometimes those strong safeties can be a little bit lost when you put him in those kind of roles. I wonder a little bit with him as a run defender from the strong safety position, though. That's the place where I want to see him be a little bit stronger in tackling and in his instincts in how he plays the run. But he is a good, rugged defender, another one of these type of cats coming out of Georgia that we've seen. And I do like his upside. I'm a little bit more in favor of Hicks because I like Hicks's upside. Jaden Hicks out of Washington State. I feel like he's been a pretty he's been a very consistent player for him. He's a real fun player to watch. He plays smart, fast, and hard, which I love always watching that from players when that shows up on tape, snap in and snap out. He's a real factor as a run defender. The Wisconsin tape this year with him got me a little worried at times because he had some kind of just brain fart moments on the football field when he played in that game. But he showed me enough on this where I feel like he'll probably be around a 3rd round kind of cat, right in there where I got Cooper DeJean at, and like his upside.
Yeah. Apparently there's some reason to believe he won't come out until next year, Jaden Hicks, but I do like him.
It could make sense. I mean, maybe he could elevate it. If I got him as a 3rd round pick right now, maybe he could elevate himself into a place of getting higher, first round kind of place by next year's draft if he comes back and has another really good year. Well, let's turn this over to our final position grouping here, Brendan. And the one that is like the defensive tackle position here, one that is likely to be one that we address, may be addressed multiple times over, but I would expect us somehow or some way to address at least early in the first 3 rounds, I would say. And that would be the linebacker position. Maybe absent us re-signing Jordan Body, but I don't think we're going to do both of those 2 moves.
Right.
So let's go in and do a couple of these guys to finish on up. And this is a strong group like the defensive tackle group, very shades of that, isn't it, Brendan? It's a pretty similar kind of crew in it, and just being pretty strong. Maybe not star power, but strong.
It's not as good as we thought it was going to be at one point. I'll say that, but it's pretty good.
That's a fair way of putting it. And who is your first guy to start out the gate here on this?
Right now, I think I'm going with Barrett Carter of Clemson. I think he's the top guy. It's tough. There are a couple of guys that are kind of clustered around here. I had a hard time figuring this one out, but I think Barrett Carter has been the most consistent. He's held up well in coverage this year for Clemson. I think he's my number 1 guy right now.
And Barrett is a guy that I do like. I'm not going to lie. He's been a bit of a drifter for me in my draft and where I've got him sitting right now. He just sometimes disappears on the tape to me. And, just kind of like that, a lot of that Georgia defense, kind of a problem that Georgia defense with some of these players in recent years. Currently he's rated 357th in PFF in their rankings of linebackers, to kind of put that his year in perspective. And I mean, you can't just blame it on being a bad Clemson defense either, because if you look up at the PFF rankings, you've got Jeremiah Trotter Jr., another middle linebacker on that defense, in the top 11, or if you ignore the minimum snap counts, he'd actually be like the 5th highest rated linebacker in college football. So he provides it's sort of like if you could make the 2 into 1, like if you could take the Carter physical elements he brings along with Jeremiah Trotter's ability to process and all that, and bring him in and put him into one player, you'd have a hell of a linebacker. But he does right now be more of to me, a project that you're taking kind of second round, and that you're going to have to refine a lot of his game out and fix some holes in his game to get, the maximized version of him out. But he's a guy that could be a Jordan Brooks kind of will linebacker to me in a defense.
Okay. Who's your number 1?
My number 1 is going to be Junior Colson. Junior Colson. I know that's not going to be the way for a lot of people on this. This is definitely one of I'm trying to get my notes here on this. Sorry. Give me a second.
No problem.
Sometimes it gets lost here. Goodness gracious. System's locked up here. Locking.
Yeah,
I like Colson. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I liked his overall game as a linebacker. I thought that what you need him to do as far as coverage, hit, run, tackle, he can do all of those things. He doesn't provide much as a pass rusher, but that's fine. That doesn't need to be the thing we look at the head of the line here. I want to see what you can do getting down in it. He's got back-to-back years of great production there for Michigan as the linebacker there. Good size, 6'3", 250. Good length. There's not really a negative part to his game that I see. It's just a very clean prospect. He's kind of like, it's funny. It's like Michigan got a couple of these players. We were talking about the right guard. He's like the equivalent of Zach Zinter for middle linebackers to me at that side. And I might be elevating him a little bit higher than I should as far as it goes, but it's just hard to find these kind of as complete players. Sometimes it seems like having to make the bite between coverage or tackling, or coverage and run defense. And with him, you're getting both items, I think.
I do like Junior Colson. There's a little bit of concern that I have with these guys who are surrounded by such elite talent, but he does stand out to me in that he's another one of these Michigan guys who's just like really, really consistent, just reliably from week to week. They always show up. They always perform. I have Colson in round 3, edging up into round 2. And Michigan's going to be playing some very important games coming up here. So he's got a great chance to bump up. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's tough with these Michigan players because in a lot of these games, they're sitting on the sideline by the third quarter because they're up by 800 points.
It's true.
So it's tough sometimes, but I like Colson too.
Yeah. And I don't have a high first. This late first to second is kind of in the spot where early second would be the spot that I'd look at with him overall in that. Who's your number 2?
The This is a guy who just had an incredible game this most recent week. And I was a little cold on this guy for a lot of this season, but he's starting to turn it on now. He did some awesome stuff in that game on Saturday. It's Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Was kind of a frustrating year for him. I have dropped him to round 2, and I still have him there. I don't think he's a round 1 guy anymore. But I do think that he's shown that he can cover. He was just kind of bumpy start.
Mm-hmm.
And his pass rushing stuff is awesome. And I know pass rushing is the least of our concerns with an inside linebacker, but Jeremiah Trotter Jr., I like the fact that he's the son of a former really good NFL player. We talk about how that kind of stuff is good sometimes. So I still have him as linebacker 2, even though he hasn't exactly blown me away this year.
How tall you think he is? They list him in 6 foot. What do you think he really is?
Yeah, he's probably more like 5'10". I am worried about that, believe me. But I'm taking the good with the bad here.
Yeah, and I've got him as my 3rd linebacker, but we are in agreement as far as him being a 2nd round guy. Rough start to the year, or a little bit of just a bumpy road to start. He's come on. I think he had a pick 6 this last week or the week before in coverage, and that's where he's really come forward.
Yeah, he had 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, and a pick 6.
Yeah, that's nice. And it's good to see him coming along. A guy this is a guy also, the testing numbers are going to matter to me. If he comes out there and he's 5'9.5", 5'10", that might matter a bit. If he is going to go out there and run a 4.55, 4.6 40 at 5'10", I might get a little worried here with Trotter on that. But what he does bring to the field, and he is certainly the son of a pro, of a real great pro. Hell, I think the son of a coach who was a pro. But he understands how to play the position. His instincts are next level. A solid tackler. He can get eaten up on blocks because of his size from time to time, but he's got a good dip and rip move to get free of it most of the time. And I really love what he brings in coverage, which is maybe as much as anything when we look at linebackers anymore, Brennan, we've got to start to maybe give that a little bit extra more weight than we would normally. Whereas maybe 20 years past, you went, well, how do they play the run first and foremost, right? When you looked at linebackers. So I do like what he's done this year. Do see him as a 2nd round guy. Do like him quite a bit. My number 2 guy was Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M, the current highest graded guy in college football by PFF at the linebacker position. I just talked a little bit about coverage mattering. Well, coverage matters quite a bit when this kid's coming in with the nearly 92 coverage grade, and it shows up on the field. He can run with anybody. He's got size and length. He drapes like nobody else. There's just no holes or openings in coverage. Nobody's getting any separation on this guy in coverage. He flips his hips really well. He's very fluid moving in space. His eyes are always very active to the quarterback. He's just got a good intuition for the position and really seeing things clearly and picking and doing it, and be it zone or be it in man. He seems to be good in both to my eyes. Really loved what I saw from him as coverage, and he brings 6'3", 230. He's bringing the prerequisite size. He's got the dimensions that he brings to the table. And then not bad as a run defender, almost an 80 grade there. He's not a hammer or anything else. He's going to get the job done. He's a good tackler. It's not going to be flashy, but it's good. It will work at the next pro level. This would be a linebacker pick, or a kind of linebacker you're looking about, in my opinion, of where the game is going for what you're going to want from the position in the future versus what you wanted from the position 20 years ago.
Yeah, I need to look more into Edgerrin Cooper. He's not somebody who's been on my radar, but I do know that a lot of the draft people are starting to really gear up on him.
Yeah, he really flashed the first second I turned on the tape with him, and it kind of clicked with that one pretty quickly on me and watching him. I think it will with you too. And the more you watch on him, it's not hard to see what he does good, and not a lot of holes in his game. And the size is legit, which, as we've seen with some of the linebackers in recent years, your Ivan Pace types a year ago, who's having a good year for Minnesota, but we've had a lot like we've had a lot of 5'9", 5'10" wide receivers coming out in recent years, even at the top of the draft. We've had a lot of undersized middle linebackers in recent years too. And so it's a great trend to see some of these guys a little bit more bigger that kind of check all the boxes. Who is your number 3rd linebacker on your list?
Let me check here. My number 3. Well, there is a guy who I think recently just got hurt. So let's just scratch him off for a second here, because I think it's a pretty serious injury. So I'm not sure how I feel. So I am going to actually go with Cedric Gray here. There are some concerns about his testing, like he might have a really slow 40 time, but he is consistently making splash plays all over the field for a UNC defense that really doesn't have anything else. Like, he is putting the team on his back in almost like a Luke Kuechly kind of way, I feel like at times. I think his coverage has come a long way this year, even though it's sometimes occasionally not great. He's had some pretty bad games in coverage, but honestly, he's providing a lot of different things. He's rushing the passer. He's going sideline to sideline. If he tests decently well, I think he's a round 3 guy, and I like him.
Yeah, I've got him a little bit higher. It's where the middle linebackers for me kind of fit like the defensive tackles. I'm sort of in. Maybe I should be pushing more of them in the 3rd round, like you are a little bit on this. You might be seeing a little bit clearer than I am with it. I like that he also has 2 years of really good production. Where he also did this last year too.
Mhm.
So you're not just getting the 1 year of it. Another guy with good size at 6'2", 235. So another guy that's going to be able to move. I think you're right to say, how's he going to run? Is it a 4.65, 4.7-ish kind of thing? Or is he going to be able to, clock up a little bit faster? And that might determine whether he is a 2nd or 3rd round, kind of cat. They've even tried at times. He's got like 52 snaps out of the slot this year, Brendan. They've utilized him even as that kind of cat at times in the defense. So he's got some versatility in the coverage grades up at 76, playing that slot position at times. That's not exactly being put out at times to put in position for success if you're a linebacker. So him doing that and succeeding in that role is really good. And even at 68.4 run defense ain't bad. He's held up over there. And like you said, some of that's also a bit the failings of the UNC defense overall, where it's not necessarily as the most talented of groups. But I like him as well. As I was saying on the one there, I have Junior Colson, Cooper, Trotter. So Trotter would be my guy here where you've got it in, but then it basically would go Colson, or it would go Cedric Gray after that. So we're kind of in close alignment on this one. Okay. Who's your next guy?
My next guy would be Junior Colson. I have him in round 3. So we already talked about him. He's a guy who has a real good chance to move up, I think, though, because he's going to be, Michigan's going to make the playoff. And honestly, I think they're going to win it all. So he's going to be front and center.
You think they're going to win it all even when they can't cheat anymore?
I think they're going to get away with that until the end. I think the college football will brush it off until after the season's over. Let them get their championship, and then they can take it away later, but no one will care because you can't actually take away a championship. You can pretend to, but you can't actually take it away.
It still counts. It still counts. Yeah, I agree on that. My guy would be Maurice Liaufu, if I can pronounce his damn name right. Let me bring up my notes. Sorry, getting my notes brought up here. I thought I had my notes in here and they buried on it, but they're not coming up here. Sorry, 1 second.
No problem.
It gets lost
this
here.
This is actually not a guy I'm familiar with, though, so you're going to have to fill me in here.
Notre Dame cat on a Notre Dame defense. When I watch Notre Dame defense, I just kind of like what I see from them. They run, they hit, they tackle. And he seems to be, to me, kind of a reflection of that. Another linebacker, good sized guy, 6'2", 240, bringing that to the table. Another guy that you'll see me kind of gravitate towards. Maybe coverage is a little bit better than the run defense, but the coverage stuff is really, really good. And I love how he does his spot drops and the reading of the quarterback's eyes and the feel and zone to get to the right place where the quarterback's going to. Something that he's kind of got to his game that sets out in coverage, more so than the other guy I was talking about, who's kind of more of he gets in there tight, like I say, kind of a draper, like Cooper. Cooper was more of kind of a draper type. This guy to me is maybe more of a guy you let him drop in his zone, feel it, and he'll kind of feel to the right area. Trotter's that guy too, where Trotter's kind of a feel guy in zone where his instincts are always going to kind of set him into the right place. And he can do that thing where he's watching the quarterback's eyes and moving his feet at the same time into the right direction, where we have guys like Jordan Brooks sometimes, where if they start to look at the quarterback, their feet will come to a stop. And then that's how these guys start running through their zones really free and easy. But also gives you a little bit of thump. He'll lay a couple hits on the football field from time to time. So he's a bit of a hitter too out there. He might be more of a guy I slide 3rd round when I really dive a bit in. He jumped out to me initially on the tape. And I like how he's progressed at Notre Dame. He's gotten better every single season that he's been there. But I think a pretty good player. Got an interesting cat. Who's your next linebacker?
I'm going to go with Smael Mondon Jr., Georgia. Apparently, he just recently broke his arm or something. I wasn't aware until earlier today. But not much to say here other than that it's just another Georgia linebacker. They're a factory down there. He and Dumas Johnson team up. I like Mondon more of the two. And he's just an all-around solid linebacker. I don't have anything remarkable to say about him. He doesn't have like the pass rushing wizardry of a Trotter Jr. So he's more like a round 3, maybe even round 4 guy for me. But I like him well enough in that area.
He's an upside guy who just has not to me realized it yet. There, Georgia. That's my thing with Smell. It's sad that he hit the broken arm. You'd like to see him finish up the season a little bit stronger because I don't think he was well graded, and there are times that he does disappear on the tape. I do have him kind of equally graded in the same place as Dumas Johnson, his teammate. I got them both in kind of a late 3rd round area of things, and it's more about the upside than it is about what they've done on the field with them. If I was being honest.
Yeah.
My guy's Danny Stutzman of Oklahoma, a guy that's kind of come along this year to me. Oklahoma, they don't play defense in the Big Ten unless you're Michigan or Ohio State. But he's a guy that he's done what he can do with Oklahoma there as far as his work goes. I think he's a fairly well-rounded player. He's just kind of a football player a little bit in his mentality out there. Love his instincts, love his awareness on the football field. I don't think that there's a huge amount of holes to his game other than maybe he's not the most fleet of foot in coverage, but he does have length that then he counters that with. So 6'4", 240, and he's got some size to him. So he can at least then, if he isn't step for step, he's got the length to get the hand in there and knock something away. And he's got that awareness. And, if he's not going to he'll get his head turned around on throws in coverage at times. Love him more as a run defender, I think, than the pass coverage, but I think he is a complete player overall, and he's really come on strong this year. A guy that I'm going to be watching closely on how he tests, Brendan, because a guy that, again, if he's running really slow, that's going to dip him down because you're worried about that part of him at the pro level. But if he can run fast, if he can test with the quickness and the 3-cone stuff quick and show up in that realm, then you start to feel like, okay, I can project him a little bit higher now as we go forward.
Yeah, I feel like him and Cedric Gray have a lot in common. Like they're both guys who need to test well, but they're all over the place for their respective defenses, and they're one of the few good players on that on those defenses.
I think it's a great point. It's that thing you go to of the guy's just a football player, but you do reach that line, don't you? Of he can be a good football player, but he's also got to have the prerequisite physical ability to where that headiness only takes you so far at the pro game, right? And that you've got to have some of that physical ability also mixed within there a bit to allow you to be a pro player and to be a good one at that point. And I'm worried with Danny on that, but the tape is really fun. And, you go between him and watching guys like Eichenberg and from an instinctual standpoint and what they're doing out there and the lack of disappearing versus this guy showing up all over the field and sideline to sideline and all that. I really like Stutzman's game.
Yeah.
Give me one more final linebacker on your list that you like, stands out to you. I'll do the same on mine.
Well, I'm of a couple different minds here. There's Eichenberg, who I don't hate, but I'm not super impressed with him this year. And I think that because of the Ohio State pedigree, he's going to go in like round 3. And I think you can do a little better than that in round 3. And then you have a guy like a Jalen Ford, who I don't think is as good as Eichenberg, but I also think there's better value there. So I'm gonna let's talk about Jalen Ford for a little bit because he's really good in coverage. In fact, he might even play safety in the NFL. Like that's, I think, very possible.
They're hammering him on the coverage this year, by the way.
Really, that's interesting
They
because
got him 527 on 663.
okay, I'm gonna have to dig into that a little bit here. But to me, he's like a linebacker that may end up converting to safety. But he's been a real playmaker this year for that Texas defense. So yeah, Jalen Ford, I think, is intriguing as like a project.
I like him quite a bit as well. I'm behind on get the banner fixed here. You tell him slacking on the banner. My bad, Brendan. I like him a lot as well. That's my guy I have in the spot is Jalen Ford here, Brendan. So I'm with you on that. I think too his coverage grades are more a bit of instinct stuff rather than physical ability stuff. Like he's got the goods to be able to move in space and potentially make that transition if maybe he lost some weight to roll that way. But he is, I think, a little more of a tantalizing guy. I think you're also right about this over Eichenberg because I think Eichenberg's kind of a finished product. I think in Ford, you have a little bit more of a mold of clay that you can kind of develop. Is that a fair assessment of it?
Yeah, there's definitely a project here, but we might have that time. If we bring back Wagner and Devin Bush, those might be your starters next year. and then you've got a year to bring Jalen Ford up to speed.
That's right. No, I could definitely see that as well with it, for sure. Jason, let me see if we got a donation here. Let me get this in. Snail, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, what do you think about Jaden Hicks? So I think I probably missed your dono back at 737. Yeah, we just covered that with Hicks. So I'm hoping, Snail, you caught me saying what I did about Hicks. So I've got him as my third rated safety. Brendan's a little bit lower on me. Brendan I think that he might go back to college another year. I just think he's a fun player. That's a football player. And I like just the way he sees the game and how he processes. He's not caught off guard. Usually he's usually in the right position. The coverage stuff in Wisconsin threw me off. So there were some easy completions he gave up in that game that I thought he was a little better in coverage at times and expected a little bit better, especially against Wisconsin, which is not exactly throwing deadly playmakers at you right and left.
Right.
So I like his game. I think he's a complete safety for the position. I think he certainly could be a target for our Hawks potentially if they were to, move on. I don't think they're likely to be targeting strong safety. If we're going to target a safety, it's probably going to be more of a free safety than strong safety at this point, I would think. But with that said, he's a good player. And if he comes out, I think he's probably a 3rd round rated guy, Snail, on that. Thank you for that donation, though. Appreciate you. You guys are all very kind on the donos tonight. So I want to say thank you for that. Well, I think that gets us through pretty well, Brendan, on our list of these guys that are emerging at this point. We're starting to round up a little bit more and get a little bit more of by the time we get to draft season, man, we're going to be about well over 100 names and deep into this. So I think it's going to definitely help us out. That's part of why I want to do this early, folks, is to get out in front of this to be able to be even much more better prepared once we do get into draft season and our understanding of these guys and where they're at and where their progression's been. Because progression's a big part, isn't it, in college football? It's not about the end point you're at necessarily, but how did you get to that end point? Did you grow as a player? Are you the same player you were when you walked in the door in college, or where you started out the year at? Or have you actually taken some steps forward? And I think that's what this gives us a chance to do by doing these shows in this way, Brendan.
Yeah, exactly. This is going to make it very easy to segue into draft mode when the season is over and we're trying to figure out what happens in the draft.
Amen. Amen. Well, you guys, we got over 3 hours in here. We went end to end on all of these draft prospects. Hopefully gave you guys a little bit of a better idea and a better understanding as to what we're going to be doing, what we're going to be looking at in this upcoming draft. Definitely we're going to have a couple little holes to fill here, but we've got the players in the right positions at the right positions of strength to where we should be able to fill them out with where we're sitting and where our team's looking at right now, Brendan. One thing's for sure, too, depending on what we do in free agency, we might be coming into this draft with not a whole hell of a lot of many needs necessarily, which will only give us that much more flexibility to operate from that value standpoint that they've been operating from for the past couple of years.
BPA,
baby. BPA. That is the way. That is the guiding light. That is our North Star, and it needs to remain so we can keep knocking these drafts out of the park. I want to thank, first and foremost, Brendan for making extra time, not some normal time, but even extra time out of his day here doing a special Wednesday show here with me this week. Really appreciate you, brother, for hanging on in here with me for 3 hours and busting and breaking down these prospects on this side of it. Folks, if you haven't already, Seahawks, Brendan Nelson. That's the name. Go over there to his channel here on YouTube. Make sure you're subbed up to there. We're doing 2 shows a week and an extra show every once in a while for you guys, just because we like you, just because we're nice like that sometimes. So we're going to be bouncing back here tomorrow night with a preview show of this Washington Commanders game and looking at this matchup between these two teams. So we will be back at 8 o'clock tomorrow. I want to thank everybody here for watching. Please do hit that like button, sub up here if you're not already subbed up here. And thank you for hanging in with us on this. Again, no, these are a little bit of a kitschy shows or certain separate shows from what we normally do, but that's what we want to do. It's all about keeping
only the real ones come out for this.
That's right.
You got to be super into this kind of stuff.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, appreciate you, Brendan. Thank you, man, brother. As always, appreciate you guys for watching out there in Seahawks land. We'll be back in just under 24 hours. And you'd hope that they wouldn't forget in 24 hours, that they wouldn't get their mind caught up in other items. But we're in the midst of the NFL season. Your team has got this year fully within its grasp, still can go out there and accomplish some great things. So I hope I don't have to remind you to remember that you got this team still hunting. Maybe you bailed. Maybe you bailed after last week. Well, I'm bringing you back in the fold. Brendan's bringing you back in the fold. Do not bail. Do not jump off the bandwagon. You're jumping off. I'm holding Brendan by his ankles. He's catching you as you jump off. We're pulling you back on. Okay. That's the way that this is going to work. Nobody's getting off this thing. Not yet. So keep it at the forefront of your mind, my fellow Seahawks faithful. That's faithful with a capital F. And please, don't you ever forget, Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.